Chapter 153. Lin Feng was controlling the black cloud flag, flying in the sky. At this moment the black light of the black cloud flag was circulating, giving off an even more extraordinary imposing manner. Within the black light, there was a faint distortion of space, revealing a powerful concept of power. From Chungang, Lin Feng not only seized a small amount of living soil from the still water flag, but also obtained a small bottle of Tianyi true water. Using this bit of Tianyi true water, Lin Feng successfully cleaned the black cloud flag that was contaminated by the Nether Blood River. Previously, because the black cloud flag was contaminated by the Blood River true water, there were many uses that could not be displayed, although it could be used for flight and short-range teleportation, and could even form a small space inside. It could not be used to fight. Now the black cloud flag had recovered its original style as a golden elixir period magic tool. The black light was both offensive and defensive, and was also a top-quality magic tool in the golden elixir period. But with Lin Feng's current strength, if he really fought, the black cloud flag would not be of much use. But after being purified by the Tianyi true water, it was much more agile to use. And in the future, if Lin Feng can successfully form his nascent soul and refine it again, the black cloud flag still has hope of advancing to the Yuanying stage. At this moment the one controlling the black cloud flag was not Lin Feng's main body, but the clone of the god of war. Lin Feng's main body was still cultivating on Yujing Mountain. After Lin Feng divided his divine sense to refine the clone of the god of war, it was equivalent to having another body. After advancing to the golden elixir period, Lin Feng's divine sense was already powerful enough to control two bodies at the same time, sharing consciousness and memories. The heavy armor had already been replaced by a purple robe. Apart from being much taller, it was no different from the main body. Lin Feng faintly smiled. This body's qi and blood is even more powerful, and also very useful. It's just that the divine sense is not as agile as the main body, and it is not as convenient to cast spells as the main body. But the power of the fleshly body is enough to make up for the lack of spells. As Lin Feng rode on the black cloud flag, he pondered. Previously, when I was comprehending the 8 trigrams book of the Great Tao, I vaguely had some vague ideas about corporeal body divine arts and martial arts fist arts, but I was unable to put them into practice. This time, I can use the powerful qi and blood of the divine god of battle's clone to create this martial art. Flying all the way, Lin Feng had already entered the range of the Great Hengduan mountain range. Although they were all connected by a chain of mountains, compared to the majestic mountains of the Kunlun mountain range, which towered into the clouds, the peaks of the Great Hengduan mountain range were not as majestic, but more precipitous. All kinds of cliffs and cliffs could be found everywhere, showing the uncanny workmanship of nature. Lin Feng's target was Mount Eternal Spring, which was located at the southern end of the Great Hengduan Mountain. It was the most powerful cultivation sect in this generation, the Wilderness Sword Sect, a member of the 9 Heaven Sword Alliance. There were all kinds of rare treasures in the Great Hengduan mountain range. The Wilderness Sword Sect that guarded this place, whether it was celestial devices or divine arts, was famous for its eccentricity and variability. It was famous in the entire Tianyuan world. The Wilderness Sword Sect's way of doing things was not overbearing. Except for a few places that were regarded as their own private property and forbidden for others to enter, the Wilderness Sword Sect allowed other foreign cultivators to enter the southern part of the Great Hengduan mountain range to search for treasures and herbs. Therefore, many cultivators entered the Great Hengduan mountain range to search for the rare treasures and spiritual medicines that they needed. Along the way, Lin Feng had seen many groups of cultivators entering the Great Hengduan mountain range. In addition to the rare treasures, the Great Hengduan mountain range was also full of many dangers. In addition to the endless number of demon beasts and fierce beasts, the mountain range itself also hid many eccentric and overbearing natural disasters. However, for the human cultivators, the most dangerous thing here was always their own kind. In the barren mountains, the human cultivators were far more dangerous than the demon cultivators. Lin Feng looked at the ongoing murder and robbery in front of him and shook his head. The current situation was that 5 people were besieging 6 people. To be exact, it was 4 people suppressing 6 people. There was still 1 person watching from the side, and did not make a move. However, the pressure brought to the 6 people who were at a disadvantage by this bystander was greater than that of the other 4 people. Because the black-robed Taoist, who was standing on the side, and did not intend to make a move, had Dharma power of the golden elixir period. His perfectly condensed aura was like a mountain pressing on the hearts of the 6 people who were besieged. Among the 6 people, 3 were in the foundation building stage, and the other 3 were in the chi refining stage. Their opponents, the 4 cultivators in gray robes, were all in the foundation building stage. They were suppressing them and beating them up. Under the leadership of a white-robed elder, the 6 people were struggling to resist. The 3 young people in the chi refining stage had been in danger several times. They could barely hold on because of the help of the elders in the foundation building stage. One of them, a girl in yellow, was beautiful. Her facial features were charming but also heroic. She said hurriedly, "Master, martial uncle, you should break out of the encirclement quickly. Don't be dragged down by us." The white-robed elder smiled bitterly. "My silly disciple, even if we want to leave now, we can't." The black-robed Taoist, who was outside the battle and did not make a move, chuckled strangely. "Little beauty, your master is the one who understands. It's funny that you still can't see the situation clearly. Be a good girl and come back with me. I won't mistreat you. If you do dual cultivation with me, I can guarantee that you will quickly build your Tao foundation. In the future, you will also have hope for the great Tao of the golden elixir period." The girl in yellow's pretty face darkened. "Taoist Taimu, you are guilty of many crimes. How many women have you harmed with evil arts? Even if Xiang Lanying dies, she will never be with an evil Taoist like you." Taoist Taimu was not angry. He chuckled and said, "I'm afraid it's not up to you." Above the clouds, Lin Feng looked at the scene in front of him with interest. At a time like this, shouldn't a young hero come out, kill the villain with one slap, save the beauty, and then the girl throw herself into his arms and repay him with her body? While Lin Feng was happily imagining things, he suddenly heard a chuckle from afar. "I've heard that Taoist Taimu practices evil arts, and often captures women to be his cultivation vessels. He has a lot of blood on his hands. Now that I've seen it, he really has a death wish." Although the chuckle was soft, it was clearly heard by everyone. A fierce light flashed in Taoist Taimu's eyes. He looked into the distance, and his gaze was almost solid, shining on a young man in black. The others also looked at the young man in black. At first glance, they couldn't help but exclaim. He was tall and handsome, wearing a black robe. His snow-white hair hung loosely behind his back. His eyes were cold and lonely, and the corners of his mouth were slightly curled up. His expression was like a smile. Everyone at the scene was captivated by his charm, forgetting to fight for a moment. This image, above the clouds, Lin Feng looked at the young man in black and was dumbfounded. So old-fashioned, no, such a cool image, this doesn't seem right? Previously, he thought that someone would come out and save the beauty, but that was just a joke. Who knew that someone like this would really come out? Taoist Taimu glanced at the young man in black and suddenly laughed. "Overconfident kid, you're only at the late stage of foundation establishment. If you want to die, I'll grant you your wish." Hearing this, the light in the eyes of the white-robed old man and the others dimmed. Obviously, they didn't think that the young man in black, who was only at the late stage of foundation establishment, could defeat Taoist Taimu. Taoist Taimu laughed strangely and shouted at the 4 gray-robed Taoists, "Little 4, little 6, take him down." The 2 gray-robed Taoists answered, "Yes, master." Their bodies flashed, and they had already left the battle, pouncing towards the young man in black. The yellow-robed girl Xiang Lanying cried out in alarm, "Watch out!" Her companions were also very anxious. Some wanted to rush over to help. Some wanted to seize the opportunity to break out of the encirclement. But Taoist Taimu kept staring at them, chuckling strangely. He opened his palm and released a cloud of black gas, trapping Xiang Lanying and the other 5. Meanwhile, his 2 disciples had already pounced in front of the young man in black. The two of them were also at the late stage of foundation establishment. 2 against 1. No wonder Xiang Lanying and the others didn't think the young man in black would win. Xiang Lanying closed her eyes. She couldn't bear to see such a charming young man in black being defeated and humiliated. In the distance, Lin Feng also couldn't bear to watch anymore. However, he wasn't pitying the young man in black who was being beaten by 2. What a joke! How could a person with this kind of image fail to save the beauty? As expected, facing the 2 gray-robed Taoists who were aggressively pouncing towards him, the young man in black didn't even look at them. Instead, he looked at Taoist Tai Mu and said indifferently, "I really don't like you wearing black. You've insulted this color." As he spoke, the young man in black suddenly punched out. Lightning flashed on his fist, densely packed with cyan and purple lightning. It was so frightening that it was as if a ghost had descended into the world. One punch, just one punch, and the 2 gray-robed Taoists were sent flying at a speed even faster than when they came. Everyone was dumbfounded. Taoist Tai Mu cried out in surprise, "Who are you?" The young man in black didn't answer, but in the sky behind him, the vast sea of clouds suddenly dispersed. Boom! Amidst the earth-shattering thunder, 4 giant war horses the size of elephants appeared in front of everyone, their bodies flashing with purple light, and their hooves treading on thunder clouds, dragging a cyan chariot the size of a small mountain. The young man in black's feet stopped, and he had already landed on the cyan thunder chariot. The giant brontosaurus horse and the tall cyan thunder chariot made his entire body shine with lightning, making him look extremely cool. No matter if it was Taoist Tai Mu or the old man in white, under the contrast of the young man in black, they were all like coyotes that had encountered a lion king. The young man in black looked down at Taoist Tai Mu and asked blandly, "You asked me who I am?" He took out a red maple leaf and opened his palm. The red leaf was blown down by the wind, fluttering freely in the air. "Cyan Thunder Chariot Red Maple Leaf," the old man in white exclaimed. "Mr. Red Leaf, it's Mr. Red Leaf." Everyone on the scene was shocked. They all fixed their eyes on the young man in black, who was calmly standing on the chariot. Taoist Tai Mu's face instantly darkened. He squeezed a few words out of his teeth. "Mr. Red Leaf Yi Piaoxue." Surrounded by the crowd, Xiang Lanying also stared at Mr. Red Leaf in a daze. Lin Feng was probably the only one who didn't feel anything. He looked at the chariot from a distance, laughed and said, "Is this the legendary A Thunderous Bang in the Sky?" Suddenly, he heard other voices coming from the chariot, and there were more than 1 or 2 people. Lin Feng took a closer look, and his eyes popped out. He was so shocked that he almost fell off the black cloud flag. Holy shit! Chapter 154. Aside from Mr. Scarlet Leaf, there were other voices coming from the chariot, and there were more than 1 or 2. Some of the voices were soft and sweet, some were crisp and pleasing to the ear, and some were heroic. But that was not the point. The point was that these voices were all made by women, not just 1 or 2. Out of curiosity, Lin Feng carefully sized up the people sitting on the chariot. At a glance, his eyes widened. Holy shit! On the chariot sat a group of stunning beauties whose beauty outshone the moon, and put the flowers to shame. Some were elegant, some were proud, some were arrogant, some were rude, some were cold and indifferent, and some were delicate and shy. None of them were the same. Saintesses, mature women, Sundara women, Lolas, and all kinds of women were here. Also, they are not ordinary women. Lin Feng only scanned with his divine sense, and confirmed that among them, the one with the lowest level is also at the Qi disciple stage. There are even 3 people who are foundation establishment stage cultivators. Harem, this is the legendary harem. Lin Feng was dumbfounded. What surprised him even more was that all the beauties in the chariot, regardless of their personalities and breeds, had their attention on Mr. Scarlet Leaf, as if he were the moon surrounded by stars. Taoist Ironwood, a cultivator of the golden elixir period, was not a threat to them at all. The group of beauties just stared at Mr. Scarlet Leaf, as if as long as he was by their side, it would not matter even if the entire great heaven primordial world was destroyed. "You girls, let go of that man. If you have any tricks up your sleeves, come at me." Lin Feng endured and endured. This sentence was on the tip of his tongue over 100 times before he did not say it out. Including the time I spent cultivating in the dark heaven timeless cave. It has been more than 10 years since I came to this world. And I'm still a virgin. Lin Feng was filled with grief and indignation. You bastard! How dare you monopolize so many resources? You deserve to be punished by the heavens. I curse you to be impotent every day. No matter what he thought, Lin Feng had to accept the fact that he might have met another Mr. Right. Moreover, unlike Xiao Yan and the other three, this guy seemed to have taken off and was about to enter his mature period. Lin Feng activated the talent detector. I wonder if he has a master? Young Master Scarlet Leaf did not have a master, so the talent detector quickly displayed his potential value. Lin Feng looked at the data displayed on the talent detector and was stunned. He tested it again to make sure that he had not made a mistake. It was indeed Mr. Maple Leaf who had opened a harem. Is there something wrong with the detector? That shouldn't be the case. Lin Feng sized up Master Red Leaf in confusion. Xiang Lanying and the others didn't care so much and let out waves of cheers. A group of people almost crying tears of joy. It really is Master Red Leaf. We're saved. Rumor has it that Master Red Leaf was the son of an official in the secular world. He started studying at the age of 4, took the exams at the age of 7, and took the imperial examinations at the age of 12. After passing the exams, he did not accept an official position, and instead entered the mountains to learn Tao? The white-robed old man nodded and said, "That's right." Back then, many major sects fought to take Master Red Leaf as a disciple, but he did not accept any of them. Instead, he meditated in the mountains for 5 years, comprehending the Tao of heaven and earth, creating his own Tao, and embarking on the path of immortality. Master Red Leaf established his foundation in 3 years, established his beer a year later, and established his pill cauldron a year later. He's only in his 20s this year, but he's already in the late stage of foundation establishment. You should know that Master Red Leaf relied entirely on his own comprehension, and did not receive any cultivation resources provided by the sections. Xiang Lanying looked at Master Red Leaf on the chariot. I heard that although Master Red Leaf is only at the foundation establishment stage, he has great fortune and powerful abilities. Even at the Qi refinement stage, he could defeat opponents with higher cultivation levels than him. A few days ago, he killed a demon commander in the Golden Elixir period, right after he advanced to the late stage of foundation establishment. The white-robed old man nodded vigorously. That's right. Xiang Lanying recalled Master Red Leaf's legendary experiences, and could not help but fall into a daze for a moment. Taoist Ironwood, who was about to become the backdrop for Master Red Leaf's legendary achievements, had an uncertain expression on his face. It would be an injustice to say that he, a cultivator of the Golden Elixir period, feared Master Red Leaf, who was at the late stage of foundation establishment. Although there was an old saying that a man's name was like a tree's shadow, Master Red Leaf had indeed killed a demon commander at the same level as Taoist Ironwood. However, those who could form the Golden Elixir period were all cultivators with incomparably firm wills. Without actual combat, reputation alone was not enough to scare Taoist Ironwood. What Taoist Ironwood feared was the blue lightning chariot, pulled by 4 Brontosaurus horses under Master Red Leaf. The 4 Brontosaurus horses alone were equivalent to the strength of 4 foundation establishment cultivators. The blue lightning chariot was even the signature product of the number 1 artificer sect in the Heaven Primal World, the Heavenly Craft Pavilion. As it rolled forward, lightning opened the way. It was definitely powerful enough. Master Red Leaf was already at the late stage of foundation establishment. Even if he was an ordinary person, with such a chariot, Taoist Ironwood would have to think twice before touching him. While Taoist Ironwood was hesitating, the other party did not hold back at all. Master Red Leaf glanced at Taoist Ironwood and said calmly, "Scram or die." Lin Feng grinned. What a guy. This taunt would definitely make him hate him to the max. As expected, Taoist Ironwood was stunned. His originally dark face instantly turned blood red. As a cultivator of the Golden Elixir period, being mocked by a foundation establishment cultivator like this, Taoist Ironwood felt terrible. Ignorant junior. You dare to be so arrogant with just a blue lightning chariot? Taoist Ironwood roared angrily. He leaped into the air, brought his palms together, and then separated them. A dark cloud loomed over Master Red Leaf. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. He saw a strange flying sword hidden deep within the dark cloud released by Taoist Ironwood. It was as agile as a fish in water. Obviously, although Taoist Ironwood was angry, he did not let his anger get to his head. Instead, he was calm and vicious. He wanted to use the dark cloud to attract the blue lightning chariot's attention. Then, he would use the flying sword in the cloud to ambush his opponent. This was a deceptive strategy to defeat the enemy. On the chariot, Master Red Leaf had always looked lonely and cold. Now, seeing Taoist Ironwood's attack, his lips curled into a smile, and he shook his head lightly. This action seemed to add infinite charm to him. The women on the chariot were all mesmerized. Blue lightning chariot? When did I say I would attack you with the chariot? Master Red Leaf chuckled and tossed out a bronze mirror. The bronze mirror spun in the air. Both sides were mirrors, one black and one white. At this moment, the black mirror spun and shone on the dark cloud released by Taoist Ironwood. The dark cloud dissipated instantly, and the flying sword hidden inside had nowhere to hide. What kind of magic item is this? Taoist Ironwood was startled. He wanted to call his flying sword back, but to his shock, he found that the flying sword that was shown on by the black mirror couldn't be called back. In the mirror, the flying sword struggled and trembled, but couldn't get rid of it. Seeing this, Taoist Ironwood immediately released another flying sword. This time, the flying sword was crimson, spewing flames, and darted towards Master Red Leaf. Master Red Leaf laughed. You are seeking death. Don't blame me. He cast an incantation gesture, and the bronze mirror in the air suddenly spun, turning into a white mirror, facing Taoist Ironwood. The mirror's light shone and directly knocked away Taoist Ironwood's water and fire flying swords. On the chariot, a young girl laughed and said, Taoist, let me teach you a lesson. My Longjuan's bronze mirror is a magic item of the golden elixir period. It is called the magnetic yin-yang mirror. This mirror is guided by the magnetic force. It is divided into two sides, yin and yang. The yin side can freeze other people's magic items, and no one can escape. The yang side can damage other people's magic items, and no one can stop it. Taoist Ironwood laughed viciously. You dare to be so arrogant in front of me with just a golden elixir period magic item? He suddenly activated his magic power, and the water and fire swords combined. The water flying sword moved like flowing water, and the fire flying sword created a raging flame. Together, they attacked Master Red Leaf's magnetic yin-yang mirror. After all, Taoist Ironwood was a cultivator of the golden elixir period, and his magic power was far greater than Master Red Leaf's. Once he exerted his magic power, the magnetic yin-yang mirror couldn't withstand it. Master Red Leaf didn't panic. He threw out a long rope and tied it up Taoist Ironwood. The long rope was somehow magical, and Taoist Ironwood couldn't dodge it, and was tied up. Once the rope tied him up, he immediately felt his magic power stagnate, and he couldn't circulate it smoothly. In this way, the gap between him and Master Red Leaf's magic power was reduced by a lot. On the chariot, a cold-looking beauty glanced at Taoist Ironwood and said, My Longjuan's dragon trapping rope is also a golden elixir period magic item. Once an opponent with the same cultivation level is tied up, he won't be able to struggle at all. He can only wait to be captured. Even though you are in the golden elixir period, your magic power will still be suppressed. Blue Thunder Chariot, Magnetic Yin-Yang Mirror, Dragon Trapping Rope. Master Red Leaf had many powerful treasures. Down below, Xiang Lanying and the others were dumbfounded. They were all fascinated and admiring him. With so many treasures, it's no wonder he can challenge those with higher cultivation levels. Lin Feng watched as Master Red Leaf took out one treasure after another, and his storage bag was like a bottomless pit. He was getting more and more confused. Judging from this, it shouldn't be. How could the talent detector come up with such an answer? Being mocked by the beauty next to Master Red Leaf, Taoist Ironwood was furious. Bitch, when I kill that brat, I will take all of your yin energy and torture you to death. He suddenly yelled, Rise! Instantly, He released 3 more flying swords, representing the 3 elements of gold, wood and earth. After combining with the water and fire swords, the 5 elements became one, and turned into a giant sword. 5 elements in wind sword. The giant sword brought up gusts of chilly wind and flew towards Master Red Leaf like howling ghosts. You've angered me. Master Red Leaf, who had been calm and indifferent since he showed up, suddenly showed anger on his face. He raised 2 fingers. You've made 2 mistakes. First, you shouldn't have played with your sword in front of me again and again. Second, you shouldn't have cursed my woman. Whoever cursed my woman, I'll kill his whole family. Master Red Leaf made a hand gesture, and a sharp sword beam flew out of the blue thunder chariot. The murderous aura was so strong that even ghosts and gods would be frightened. I'll show you what a real sword is. Chapter 155. A sharp sword light hovered above the chariot, its murderous aura shocking the heavens. Even Lin Feng was surprised. This sword has such a strong murderous aura. Lu Yang is from the Shu Mountain Sword sect, but his sword is no match for this murderous sword. Mr. Red Leaf did not care about Taimu's 5 elemental Yin wind sword at all. Filled with compassion, he sighed. This sword is called the 7 Evils Dragon-Slaying Sword. When it was at its peak, it slaughtered countless living beings and cultivated a peerless murderous aura. It is a demonic weapon made in heaven. I don't use this sword easily. You forced me to do it today. As he spoke, Mr. Red Leaf made a sword gesture. The 7 Evils Dragon-Slaying Sword in the air let out a shrill cry, as if a dragon was about to die. The 7 Evils Dragon-Slaying Sword turned into a black light and intercepted Taimu's 5 elemental Yin wind sword. The whistling sinister wind was stirred up by the baleful aura and instantly disappeared without a trace. The giant 5 elemental Yin wind sword was cut in half by the black light. Taimu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Like a wounded beast, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Although he was furious, he was sure that with his early-stage golden elixir cultivation, he was no match for Mr. Red Leaf, who was only at the late stage of foundation establishment. He was still superior in terms of magical power and abilities, but he was no match for all the treasures his opponent had. Especially the 7 Evils Dragon-Slaying Sword. It was a powerful weapon. Not to mention that Mr. Red Leaf's chariot hadn't even shown its power yet. Taimu did not dare to hesitate any longer. He hurriedly made a gust of evil wind and fled. Mr. Red Leaf raised his eyebrows. You still want to leave after committing so many crimes? He made a sword gesture. The 7 Evils Dragon-Slaying Sword turned into a black light again and chased after Taimu. Taimu turned around and glared at him. You want to kill me? I'll die with you. As he spoke, he bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood floated in the air and did not dissipate. Taimu quickly moved his fingers in the air, drawing a spell symbol with his own spirit blood. The seal flashed with a green-purple light and seemed to shrink slightly. Then it exploded and turned into endless evil wind. Amidst the chilly wind, there was a foul stench assailing their nostrils. Lin Feng felt nauseous from far away. In all his life, other than the Nether Blood River, there isn't anything smellier than this. The white-robed elder and the others below all cried out in alarm. Be careful, it's the extreme poisoning wind. Young master, be careful. Without hesitation, Xiang Lanying leaped forward and stood in front of Master Scarlet Leaf, shielding him from the chilly wind. Xiang Lanying's body went limp as soon as she was hit by the cold wind, and a layer of purple appeared on her face. Young Master Scarlet Leaf frowned slightly. With a wave of his hand, he brought Xiang Lanying onto the Blue Thunder chariot. After carefully examining her condition, he took out a jade pendant and put it on her. With the help of the jade pendant, the purplish color on Xiang Lanying's face subsided slightly, but she was still deeply poisoned. Young Master Scarlet Leaf gasped. What a vicious poison! With this interruption, Daoist Taimu finally seized the opportunity and fled in panic. On the Blue Thunder chariot, a noble and cold woman in a palace dress frowned slightly. But you let him escape. Young Master Scarlet Leaf shook his head. Although I don't need it, this lady is always kind. I can't just leave her be. The noble and cold woman in the palace dress revealed a faint smile. It's precisely because you're this kind of person that I chose you as my husband." Young Master Scarlet Leaf smiled. An elegant and gentle beauty beside him smiled. "What do you plan to do next, Langjun? The poison in this lady's body hasn't been cleared yet. I'll take responsibility until the end. Coincidentally, we're going to the 100 Herb Sect. The 100 Herb Sect is famous for refining medicine and curing poisons in the Great Hengduan Mountain Range. We can ask their medical experts to treat her." Young Master Scarlet Leaf sighed. The arrogant girl curled her lips. "Nice words, but I think you want to add another sister to our family." Young Master Scarlet Leaf smiled. "She's willing to follow me, so of course I won't refuse. Don't be angry, Xiao Man. You should know that I like you both equally." The girl named Xiao Man wrinkled her nose and turned her head away. But it was obvious that she wasn't really angry. She was just throwing a tantrum. On the chariot, a shy girl suddenly said, "Langjun is going to the 100 Herb Sect to look for the Rinyuan Panacea. I wonder if the Rinyuan Panacea can cure this sister?" The cold woman in the palace dress frowned slightly. "Xiao Rou, be careful with your words. Don't say these things in front of outsiders." The girl named Xiao Rou nodded shyly. She looked like a frightened rabbit. "I'm sorry, big sister." The smile of the woman in the palace dress was like the thawing of an iceberg. She held Xiao Rou in her arms and smiled. "Silly girl. Of course I know you didn't mean it. Are you kidding me?" Lin Feng, who was above the clouds, was dumbfounded. "The harem is so harmonious. Who are you kidding?" For a moment, Lin Feng really wanted to worship this young Master Scarlet Leaf as his teacher. Not for anything else, but for the fact that this brother of his could have a big, good and harmonious harem. Only then did young Master Scarlet Leaf talk to Xiang Laning's companions. "This girl was poisoned because of me. It is my duty to save her. After she is out of danger, I will send her back to your sect." The old man in the white robe and the others looked at each other and nodded. "Thank you, young master." The two young men looked sad. Looking at young Master Scarlet Leaf on the chariot, they both looked ashamed of their inferiority. Obviously, they also admired Xiang Laning, who was beautiful and elegant. But after meeting young Master Scarlet Leaf, they could only end up in tragedy. Young Master Scarlet Leaf nodded and put away the 7 Evils dragon-slaying sword, the magnetic yin-yang mirror, and the dragon-trapping lasso. The 4 brontosaurus horses neighed loudly and strode forward with their huge iron hooves. Accompanied by wind and thunder, they pulled the chariot, which was the size of a small city tower, and broke through the clouds, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Only the earth-shattering sound of thunder could be heard as the chariot gradually faded away. What a flashy arrival and flashy departure! Lin Feng did not hurry to follow. Instead, he stood where he was, his expression uncertain. What puzzled him was that the talent detector showed young Master Scarlet Leaf's various values. Everything else was fine, but the key was his luck. This young Master Scarlet Leaf's luck was only 5. Is the detector malfunctioning? Lin Feng's mind was filled with question marks. Young Master Scarlet Leaf, who was full of treasures and had a harem, only had 5 luck? He was only in the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, and he had at least 3 golden elixir artifacts with him, as well as the Blue Thunder Chariot, which had combat power comparable to a golden elixir artifact. No matter how he looked at it, Zhu Yi, who had full luck, was not as arrogant as him. While Lin Feng was puzzled, he suddenly found something even more strange. After the thunder of the Blue Thunder Chariot disappeared completely, the old man in the white robe and the others looked at each other and smiled. The old man in the white robe did not say anything. He just waved his hand and left quickly. The other 4 followed closely behind him. They left in the direction that Taoist Taimu had escaped to. Chasing after Taoist Taimu? I don't think so. No matter how weak the fallen phoenix is, it's not something that they can take advantage of. Lin Feng frowned and followed them decisively. After chasing for dozens of miles, the old man in the white robe and the others entered a small valley together. Lin Feng entered the small valley and saw that there were already people waiting for the old man in the white robe and the others. The one in the lead was Taoist Taimu. Behind him were his 2 remaining disciples. At this moment, Taoist Taimu's face was ashen. His originally dark face was pale. Young Master Scarlet Leaf had broken his natal artifact, the 5 elements Yin Wind sword, and it had indeed caused him great harm. But at this moment, Taoist Taimu's expression was calm, without the slightest anger or frustration. He calmly watched the old man in the white robe and the others enter the valley. When the old man in the white robe saw him, he did not show any fear or hatred. Instead, he cupped his fists and bowed. Taoist. Seeing this, how could Lin Feng not understand the truth? This Taoist Taimu was in cahoots with the old man in the white robe. Everything that happened before was all an act. They were setting up a trap for others to jump into. And young Master Scarlet Leaf was obviously the one who fell into the trap. How is it? Is it going well? Taoist Taimu asked calmly. The old man in the white robe answered. Lanning has been taken away by him. It should not have aroused any suspicion. It is going well. Taoist Taimu nodded and looked worried. Lanning is outstanding, but young Master Scarlet Leaf is surrounded by beautiful women. It will not be easy to succeed. The old man in the white robe and the others also nodded with worried faces. We have to try our best. The old man in the white robe sighed. Taoist Taimu waved his sleeve and said, You can leave now. The old man in the white robe and the others left. Taoist Taimu stood where he was and murmured to himself, We have to succeed after paying such a big price. I have to get the Renyuan Jindan of the 100 Herbs sect. Thinking of the Renyuan Jindan, Taoist Taimu's eyes suddenly burned with passion. Well, what is the Renyuan Jindan you are talking about? At this moment, a voice suddenly came from beside them. Taoist Taimu was shocked. Lin Feng's figure appeared in the air, looking at him with a curious expression. Taoist Taimu shouted, Who are you? Lin Feng shook his head and said, Who I am is not important. What is important is, what is the Renyuan Jindan that you are trying to get from that young Master Scarlet Leaf? Taoist Taimu's face turned pale. He spread his hands, and the rolling dark clouds covered Lin Feng. If you fight with me, you won't have the slightest chance. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent. Because right now you're too close to me. Taoist Taimu was alarmed. The strong sense of danger almost made his soul jump out of his body. At this moment, he had no time to suppress his injuries. He hurriedly tried to increase his power. However, Lin Feng suddenly moved at this moment. His body flashed, so fast that he only left a series of afterimages in Taoist Taimu's eyes. Just as Lin Feng said, the distance between them was too close for his avatar of the god of war. When the word close came out, Lin Feng had already punched. Before the word close was finished, Lin Feng had already pulled back his fist. Lin Feng stood there calmly, as if he had never moved. Taoist Taimu stared at his chest. To be exact, he was staring at the big hole in his chest that was punched by Lin Feng. Chapter 156. Taimu stared dumbfoundedly at the bloody hole in his chest. Only now did he understand what Lin Feng meant when he said that the two of them were too close. Taimu's body slowly fell to the ground. His internal organs were all destroyed by Lin Feng's punch. His body was already in a state of death. I have the cultivation of the early golden elixir realm. Although I don't specialize in physical magic, my physical body was destroyed by a single punch. How high is this person's cultivation? Taimu was terrified. A golden light shot out from the center of his forehead and floated into the distance. He had attached his soul to the golden elixir and tried to escape. Of course, Lin Feng wouldn't let him escape. He pointed out with his finger, and the power that contained the Netherworld Nirvana spell instantly locked onto Taimu's soul. Earlier, Priest Taimu had already been severely wounded in the battle against Mr. Red Leaf. Now he was severely wounded by Lin Feng. His soul had been severely wounded. Right now, he could only obediently let Lin Feng capture him and turn him into a puppet with the Netherworld puppet controlling art. Lin Feng smiled. Can you tell me now? Taoist Taimu didn't want to say it, but this was not up to him. He could only tell Lin Feng everything he knew. Recently, a piece of news suddenly spread in the 100 Herbs sect near Mount Changchun, in the Great Hengduan mountain range. The 100 Herbs sect's ancestor developed a strange pill called the Renyuan Jindan. It was said that this pill could help foundation building cultivators form the golden elixir and advance to the golden elixir period. If a cultivator in the golden elixir period took it, He might be able to improve the quality of his golden elixir. It was said that the Renyuan Jindan would be ready soon, which was why Taimu wanted it. As for Mr. Red Leaf, he obviously heard about it and went to the 100 Herbs sect. Lin Feng frowned. If the 100 Herbs sect has such a pill, doesn't that mean they can mass-produce cultivators in the golden elixir period? This was an extremely terrifying thing. For ordinary sects, the golden elixir period was the core of the sect. Sects like the Hengyu sect and the Xiandao sect only had one Yuanying ancestor. The sect master and elders were only in the golden elixir period. Even in large sects like the Wilderness Sword sect, Celeritas Sword sect, and Blaze Sword sect, during the golden elixir period they are still the pillars of the sect, the backbone of the sect. If the 100 Herb sect could mass-produce golden elixir period cultivators with pills, then it would be an extremely terrifying matter. On the other hand, with the other sects, especially the local tyrant of the Great Transverse Mountain, the Wilderness Sword sect, sit back and watch the 100 Herbs sect rise under their noses. Lin Feng raised his doubts and Taoist Taimu answered honestly, I heard that the Wilderness Sword sect specially sent people to the 100 Herbs sect to investigate. The final conclusion was that the Renyuan panacea is completely fake and is a rumor. But we would rather believe it than not, so we still have to plan as much as possible. If there really is a Renyuan panacea, then we can think of a way to get it. Lin Feng nodded his head and did not say anything more. He put Taoist Taimu into the black cloud flag and continued to fly towards the eternal spring mountain on a black light. No matter whether the Renyuan panacea is real or not, at least the breathing soil is something that Lin Feng is determined to get. The eternal spring mountain is located at the southern end of the Great Transverse Mountain. It is like spring all year round and the climate is excellent. Further south, the climate will be extremely hot, and the north of the eternal spring mountain will be abnormally cold. Being sandwiched between the hot and cold climate, there are many rare and precious elixirs here. Lin Feng landed in the lush eternal spring mountain and found a mountain stream according to Chen Gang's instructions. He walked along the mountain stream and soon came to a karst cave. The karst cave is extremely huge, with countless forks in the underground part, extending in all directions. It is not so much a karst cave as a huge underground palace. Entering the karst cave, Lin Feng went deep to search, but the result disappointed him. After searching the whole karst cave, Lin Feng only found a little bit of the breathing soil, which is less than the amount seized from Chen Gang's still water flag. What's going on here? Lin Feng grabbed Chen Gang's soul expressionlessly and said, I remember you said that the breathing soil you took to refine the still water flag was only a drop in the bucket. Chen Gang said helplessly, I did take a very small part. Maybe someone else found this place and took all the breathing soil away. Lin Feng frowned slightly and was about to ask again when a voice suddenly came from the entrance of the karst cave. Who is it? Lin Feng calmly took back Chen Gang's soul, turned around and saw two cultivators dressed in blue standing at the entrance of the karst cave, looking at him with vigilance. These two people were only at the qi refining stage. They could not see through Lin Feng's cultivation level, but intuitively felt that Lin Feng's cultivation level was above them. So although they were vigilant, they did not dare to provoke Lin Feng in the slightest. Lin Feng smiled. I heard that there is a strange soil here, called the breathing soil, which can grow on its own and never diminish, so I came to see it. He turned his head and looked around, but there doesn't seem to be any. Before coming to Eternal Spring Mountain, Lin Feng had also made some preparations and recognized the clothes of the two qi refining cultivators. It was the uniform of the cultivators of the 100 Herbs sect. The two qi refining cultivators looked at each other, and one of them looked at Lin Feng with vigilance. Sir, did you come here to obtain the breathing soil? Lin Feng's heart was slightly moved and he smiled. Not at all. I was purely curious, and just wanted to see it. I cultivate in water Dao techniques, and earth can subdue water. I won't find trouble for myself. As he spoke, Lin Feng waved his hand, and several water arrows hit the stalactites beside him, shattering them. His 8 trigrams of the Great Way of the Heavens comprehended the true meaning of creation, and it could create all things. Condensing a few water arrows was a small matter. Seeing this, the hostility of the two chi refining cultivators decreased by half, and one of them smiled. Sir, you came at a bad time. The breathing soil in the cave has already been taken away by the ancestor of the 100 Herbs sect. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. The so-called ancestor was naturally the 100 Herbs sect's Yuanying expert, the 100 Herbs sect's ancestor. Speaking of which, the 100 Herbs sect was famous for concocting medicine and pills. The sect's Dao techniques and divine abilities were not good at attacking and killing enemies. Generally speaking, the cultivators of the 100 Herbs sect would use refined panaceas to draw out the essence of the panaceas to create various spells and divine abilities. Their healing and recovery abilities were very strong, and they could also refine strong poisons to hurt and defend the enemy. But overall, their pure combat strength was weaker than cultivators of the same realm. Even so, the 100 Herbs sect was a solid Yuanying cultivator, and it was said that he had already formed his nascent soul nearly 1,000 years ago. Lin Feng's current cultivation level was at the early stage of the golden elixir. If he stayed at Mount Yujing, he was confident that he could resist a Yuanying cultivator attacking the mountain with the help of the cyclic purple qi and the yin and yang life and death formation. But if he were to rush head-on into the enemy's lair and fight against a Yuanying expert, that would be asking for trouble. Besides, other than the 100 Herbs sect's ancestor, there must be a certain number of golden elixir elders in the 100 Herbs sect. Usually, Lin Feng would not care. But if he were to fight the 100 Herbs sect's ancestor, even the slightest counterweight could tip the balance of the scales. Lin Feng's mind raced, but he did not show the slightest emotion on his face. He smiled and shook his head. That's too bad. I wanted to see that strange soil that can grow on its own. The two chi refining cultivators of the 100 Herbs sect both laughed. Seeing it might not be good. Just as you said, this living soil can almost be considered the nemesis of water-type Dao techniques. Lin Feng smiled noncommittally and walked out of the karst cave. When he passed by the two chi refining cultivators, he suddenly said in a seemingly unintentional manner, "By the way, I heard that the Renyuan Jindan refined by your sect is about to come out. I wonder how it is. When exactly will it come out?" Lin Feng was deliberately beating the grass to startle the snake. Since the Wilderness Sword sect had come to inquire, the 100 Herbs sect should naturally know that some internal information had been leaked. Therefore, Lin Feng was not afraid that they would be on guard. On the contrary, Lin Feng deliberately beat the grass to startle the snake. The more the other party did, the more likely it was that they would make a mistake. Once they failed to deal with it, they would expose their flaws to Lin Feng. Lin Feng did not care about the Renyuan Jindan, but the living soil was the key. Who knew that when the two chi condensation cultivators heard Lin Feng's question, they looked at each other, both with blank expressions. Our 100 Herbs sect has never had the Renyuan Jindan. Where did you hear the rumor? Maybe I made a mistake. Lin Feng carefully observed their expressions. There was no panic or vigilance, only confusion. It did not seem that they were faking it. They really did not know anything. Their cultivation level is too low to know about this information? Lin Feng slightly frowned, but soon denied this guess. No, if it was really leaked by someone inside the 100 Herbs sect, it must have spread in our own sect first. If that was the case, it was impossible that the two cultivators did not know anything about it. If the news about the Renyuan Jindan was a rumor, then it would be fine. If it was true, then things would be interesting. The information that even the disciples of the 100 Herbs sect did not know was actually spread all over the sky in the outside world. Lin Feng walked out of the karst cave, his eyes flashing. Someone outside the 100 Herbs sect got the news about the Renyuan Jindan and spread the news. That is to say, whether the Renyuan Jindan is real or not, someone wants to harm the 100 Herbs sect. In this case, there was still a chance for Lin Feng to fish in troubled waters. After leaving the karst cave, Lin Feng climbed to the top of a mountain and looked to the south. There was a steep and dangerous mountain that went straight into the sea of clouds. It was the main peak of the Eternal Spring Mountain, the 100 Herbs sect's base. The Eternal Spring Mountain was surrounded by clouds. Lin Feng took a deep breath from afar, and felt the light power of the medicine spread to his limbs and bones. The 100 Herbs sect was indeed famous for making elixirs and medicines. The clouds around the main peak were all transformed by the medicine aura of the spiritual herbs and spiritual medicines. It would be better to go in and see what is going on. As Lin Feng was thinking, he suddenly felt something. Looking back, he saw more than a dozen sword lights flying from afar. Their target was the Eternal Spring Mountain. The sword lights were colorful, but they all faintly revealed a sense of desolation. The Wilderness Sword Sect. Perfect timing. Lin Feng's heart moved. He had an idea. Chapter 157. More than a dozen sword lights cut through the sky and flew toward the Eternal Spring Peak, where the Herbs sect was located. The sword lights were colorful and looked messy. However, if one looked carefully, he would find that all the sword lights revealed a sense of desolation. Lin Feng stared at the sword lights and thought, I've long heard that the treasure of the Wilderness Sword Sect is called the Great Desolation Sword Method. It has a long history and has been passed down from the remote antiquity to the present. It's quite unique. Today, I see that it deserves its reputation. The leading one was a red sword light with amazing power. Like a meteor, it fell toward the Eternal Spring Peak with a long flame tail. Sword cultivator of the Golden Elixir period. Lin Feng glanced at it and immediately determined its cultivation. The Wilderness Sword Sect was the biggest power in the southern part of the Great Transverse Mountain Range. Cultivators of the Golden Elixir period visiting the Herbs sect were like people from a superior unit inspecting a subordinate department. The Herbs sect naturally would not shut them out. Under the control of someone, the hazy clouds and mist dispersed to both sides. The magic formation was temporarily stopped, and the Wilderness Sword Sect's sword cultivators were welcomed up the mountain. The Herbs sect had an ancestor of the Yuanying period. The highest cultivation of the Wilderness Sword Sect was only a cultivator of the Golden Elixir period. Therefore, they also showed their due respect to the ancestor of the Herbs sect. They stopped their sword lights, landed on the ground, and walked up the mountain from the foot. Lin Feng took this opportunity to hide himself and followed the cultivators of the Wilderness Sword Sect to the Eternal Spring Peak. Whether he broke in by force or by stealth, it was easy to alarm the ancestor of the 100 Herbs sect if he touched the mountain-protecting formation. Now, taking advantage of the visit of the Wilderness Sword Sect and the opening of the gate of the Herbs sect, Lin Feng secretly entered the Eternal Spring Peak. With the help of the system, as long as he did not fight with others, it was difficult for others to find out the existence of Lin Feng. Walking on the mountain road to the top of the peak, Lin Feng paid attention to hiding his whereabouts and quietly observed the situation on the Eternal Spring Peak. The Eternal Spring Peak followed the steep style of the Great Transverse Mountain Range. There were cliffs everywhere, and the mountain rocks were straight up and down. The slope was very steep. Generally speaking, the cultivation sects would plant medicinal herb fields in the mountain gate on relatively gentle slopes. On the other hand, the 100 Herbs sect's elixirs all grew on the cliffs. In the crevices between the rocks, there was some soil. Many spirit herbs grew out of the soil in these crevices, swaying and growing between the cliffs until they ripened. What was even more shocking was that almost all of the cliff stone walls were covered with all kinds of spiritual herbs, densely covering the stone walls in the air. The 9-turn heavenly fungus is the main ingredient for the vast majority of medicines that restore magic power. Mystic gold blood ginseng, the main ingredient of the Thunderclap Great Rejuvenating Pill. It has a miraculous effect in treating flesh wounds. The Tri-Sun Sea Expanding Pill refined from the tricolor orchid can expand the Qi Sea of an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator and increase their total magical power. There's also the Spirit Harmonization Fruit. Refining it into a Spirit Harmonization Pill can increase the speed at which a cultivator absorbs the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, thus increasing the efficiency of cultivation. Good heavens, they're all good herbs. Lin Feng was drooling at the sight. He was not proficient in medicinal herbs, so he didn't know more than half of the spiritual herbs on the rocks. However, just the herbs that he was able to recognize were already enough to make him extremely excited. Ascending the eternal spring peak, the top of the peak was flat, but it didn't look like it was formed naturally. Instead, it looked like someone with great divine sense and dharma power had forcibly shaved off the top of the peak. The leader of the wilderness sword sect was a thin middle-aged man. He carried a long sword on his back and looked calm and composed. He signaled the others to follow the elder of the 100 Herb sect, who was in charge of reception, to rest and settle down. Then, under the guidance of others, the middle-aged man walked into the main hall at the center of the peak alone. In the main hall, a white-haired elder in cyan clothes was sitting cross-legged on a futon. In front of him was a huge elixir furnace. The fire in the furnace was burning fiercely, and a wisp of medicine fragrance came out of it. Obviously, the refining of elixirs had reached a critical moment and was about to be completed. The thin middle-aged man cupped his hands and said, "I'm Chu Bin. Nice to meet you, Senior 100 Herb." The white-haired elder was the ancestor of the 100 Herb sect. He smiled faintly and said, "Chu Bin, you don't have to be so polite. Your master and I have been friends for nearly 1,000 years." A smile appeared on Chu Bin's thin face. In front of the wilderness sword sect where he came from, the 100 Herb sect was just a small fry. However, he was still very respectful to the ancestor of the 100 Herb sect. The reason was that a practitioner of the Golden Elixir period should respect an ancestor of the Yuanying period. One could not respect people, but one must respect power. This was Chu Bin's creed. He looked at the elixir furnace and said with a smile, "Senior, you are going to make a furnace of good elixirs." The ancestor of the 100 Herb sect laughed and said, "You came at the right time. Take half of this furnace of elixirs back to your master." Chu Bin nodded with a smile. The 100 Herb sect occupied the blessed land of the Great Transverse Mountain. The reason why the Wilderness Sword sect had a tacit attitude was that the 100 Herb sect had to pay a large number of elixirs to the Wilderness Sword sect as a tribute every year. Chu Bin's master was the elder of the Wilderness Sword sect, who had the closest relationship with the ancestor of the 100 Herb sect. Most of the time, the pavilion closest to the water enjoys moonlight first. Out, when the time was right, the ancestor of the 100 Herb sect waved his wide robe sleeves, and the elixir furnace was opened. Instantly, the smell of elixirs filled the air. Countless rays of light rushed out and illuminated the entire hall. Among the rays of light, countless spiritual clouds, auspicious signs, and fairy flowers and precious trees appeared. Chu Bin took a light breath and felt comfortable all over. He felt that his golden elixir had become much rounder. Good elixirs. In the entire Great Transverse Mountain, only you can refine such elixirs. Chu Bin praised. Moreover, your skill in refining elixirs has reached the point of perfection. You almost don't waste any of the medicinal materials. You refine all of them into elixirs. It really makes me gasp in amazement. The ancestor of the 100 Herb sect stroked his long beard and was obviously very satisfied. But soon he sighed again. It's a pity that this elixir furnace can't keep up with the times. The ancestor of the 100 Herb sect's elixir furnace was an artifact he obtained during his golden elixir period. At that time, he naturally regarded it as a treasure. But as his own cultivation and alchemy skills increased, this elixir furnace became somewhat outdated. Although the ancestor of the 100 Herb sect had upgraded the elixir furnace to an artifact of the Yuanying period after he formed his nascent soul, the foundation of the elixir furnace itself was relatively shallow. After forcefully upgrading it, the ancestor of the 100 Herb sect still felt that it was not powerful enough when he used it. If only I could get my hands on the furnace of the outer core. The ancestor of the 100 Herb sect's face was full of nostalgia. I saw it once in the past. Unfortunately, I just brushed past it. I wanted to search for it later, but I couldn't find it no matter what. Chu Bin's thoughts wandered. I've heard of the great name of the furnace of the outer core. It's said that this furnace is made from meteoric iron. When refining elixirs, it generates its own core fire, which adds a strong fire power. Refining elixirs is twice the result with half the effort. The ancestor of the 100 Herb sect sighed and waved his sleeve. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Chu Bin nodded. His expression became much more solemn. Senior, how's the progress with the Rinyuan Panacea? The ancestor of the 100 Herb sect smiled. The second batch of Rinyuan Panacea is about to mature. You don't need to worry. In the faction, although my master has tried his best to cover it up, it has already attracted a lot of attention. Chubin sighed. What my master means is that after refining this batch, we should put it aside and wait for the attention to pass. The eyes of the ancestor of the 100 Herb sect, which seemed to be blurred by old age, suddenly shone brightly. That's the only way. If I catch the person who leaked the news, I'll make him taste all kinds of strange poisons in the world. He glanced at Chubin. It's the same as last time. After the elixirs are completed, you can take away 60% of the elixirs. You can stay on the mountain for the next few days. After the elixirs are completed, you can take the elixirs and go on your way. Chubin nodded. I've come under the orders of my master. That's exactly what I intend to do. Lin Feng saw Chubin enter the main hall, but he did not continue to follow him. Let's find the living soil first. After thinking for a while, Lin Feng took out the mirror of heaven and earth. Since this item could find the mountain god Jade, it should be able to find the living soil now. Sure enough, a yellow light flashed on the surface of the mirror of heaven and earth, and two light spots lit up. The red light spot in the center of the mirror represented Lin Feng, and the yellow light spot represented the location of the living soil. Lin Feng followed the directions of the mirror of heaven and earth. As he walked, he suddenly heard a long neigh. What a familiar sound. Lin Feng turned his head and saw 4 giant brontosaurus horses, dragging an equally giant cyan thunder chariot, slowly moving forward under the guidance of the 100 Herb sect. Mr. Red Leaf got off the chariot and walked slowly, talking to an elder of the 100 Herb sect, who was in the golden elixir period. Although Mr. Red Leaf was only in the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, he was already a rising star in the Great Hengduan mountain range. Everyone believed that he was destined to become a legend. At the same time, he was generous and often bought large quantities of medicinal pellets from the 100 Herb sect. He was a big customer of the 100 Herb sect, so they sent an elder of the golden elixir period to receive him. Mr. Red Leaf's harmonious and large harem was now obediently following behind him. This large group of beautiful women had earned Mr. Red Leaf a lot of face. Walking in the territory of the 100 Herb sect, people would turn their heads to look at him. What drove all the male disciples of the 100 Herb sect crazy was that these beautiful women would stare at Mr. Red Leaf's back, even as they walked. They didn't hide their love for him at all. The only thing missing was a line of words written on their foreheads. I love Red Leaf, I am proud. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. He noticed that Xiang Lanying was also among this group of beautiful women. Her face was still a bit pale. It seemed that she had just recovered from the poison. However, this did not stop her from walking at the same pace as the rest of the group. She stared at Mr. Red Leaf with infatuation. It was obvious that she had successfully become a member of Mr. Red Leaf's harem. Lin Feng laughed silently when he saw this. Although he was a bit displeased that a bunch of good cabbages had been taken away by the same pig, Lin Feng quickly put the stallion to the back of his mind and returned his attention to the mirror of heaven and earth. Lin Feng searched according to the mirror of heaven and earth. After a while, it showed that he was very close to the living soil. However, when he looked up, he was surrounded by barren mountains. The living soil should have been taken away by the 100 Herb ancestor not long ago. He must have wanted it for some purpose. Could it be for the legendary Rinyuan Jindan? Lin Feng thought to himself. If the Rinyuan Jindan really exists, and the disciples of the 100 Herb sect don't know about it, it means that the 100 Herb ancestor has hidden it from others and secretly refined this pill. If I were the 100 Herb ancestor, where would I put the secret alchemy room? Chapter 158. If I were the 100 Herb ancestor, where would I place the secret pill room? Lin Feng asked himself. Looking at the barren mountains around him, Lin Feng silently thought. Since it's a secret pill room that even the disciples of the 100 Herb sect don't know about, it means that normal people definitely can't come into contact with this place. Normal people can't come into contact with this place but the 100 Herb ancestor himself can come and go as he pleases. Lin Feng stamped his feet, looking at the rocks under his feet. If a cave is dug out inside Eternal Spring Peak, but no passageways are left, other people won't be able to come into contact with it. And as a Yuanian cultivator, I have the ability to travel through space and ignore the terrain, so it's extremely easy for me to enter and exit this cave. I just need to accurately determine the position of the cave. A smile appeared on Lin Feng's face. Even though I'm not a Yuanian cultivator, I can still enter and exit your little treasury. Through the precise location given by the mirror of heaven and earth, Lin Feng waved the black cloud flag, black light flowed, and he disappeared. Countless scenes flashed through the space turbulence in front of him, finally returning to darkness. Lin Feng knew that he had arrived. Even though it was pitch black, Lin Feng's eyes shone with awe-inspiring light. The darkness didn't affect his vision. What appeared in front of Lin Feng was a door. Lin Feng didn't casually touch it. Since this was the 100 Herb ancestor's secret pill room, then there would definitely be many restrictions set up to prevent people from entering. Using the black cloud flag's teleportation effect, Lin Feng passed through the wall and arrived on the other side of the door. What welcomed him was the heavy guard set up by the 100 Herb ancestor, the giant ants of the southern border that chose people and ate gold and iron. The red devil miasma that consumed gold and corroded bones, specialized in breaking the magic power of cultivators. The dense white fog that confused people's minds and confused people. The demonic beasts whose minds were controlled by the 100 Herb ancestor, equivalent to cultivators of the golden elixir period. However, for Lin Feng, who could teleport, he could move unimpeded without alerting anyone. But when it came to the last step, Lin Feng was stuck. It was a thick layer of ice, and the cold air was oppressive. It formed a circle, like a city of ice, blocking Lin Feng outside. What's even worse is that Lin Feng slightly sensed and discovered that the 100 ancestor actually set up a space restriction here. He wouldn't stop Lin Feng from teleporting, but the moment Lin Feng tried to pass through the ice wall and triggered the spatial seal, the 100 Herb's ancestor would immediately sense it. Lin Feng knocked on the surface of the ice. It was extremely sturdy. This strength was probably no weaker than the ancient glaciers in the Arctic Sea. Only the heavens knew how the 100 Herb's ancestor had obtained it. The true sun fire should be able to break this ice seal. Lin Feng took out the Sun True Fire seed and activated the Sun True Fire's divine light that looked like golden needles. After it landed on the ice, it started burning fiercely. As one of the 7 great true fires, the Sun True Fire's firepower was astonishing. It quickly broke through the ice and continued to penetrate deeper. But Lin Feng's mind moved. He suddenly felt that because the ice was melting, the ice seal was reacting. This was a restriction set up by the 100 Herb's ancestor. Once there was a reaction, the 100 Herb's ancestor would sense it immediately with his mind. Lin Feng's thoughts raced. He immediately raised his hand and chopped at the air. It was the celestial barrier's technique. It cut off the 100 Herb's ancestor's restriction. This time, Lin Feng was extremely careful when he used the celestial barrier. He didn't really want to cut off the 100 Herb's ancestor's connection with this place. Instead, he wanted to temporarily block the restriction's perception of the changes in the City of Ice. He wanted to limit its reaction to this cave and not let the 100 Herb's ancestor sense it. However, this kind of barrier couldn't last for too long, especially since it wasn't Lin Feng's main body here, but his clone of the God of War. His body was extremely powerful, but his techniques weren't as agile as his main body. Lin Feng glanced at the progress of the sun's true fire melting the ice. After estimating the speed, his heart sank. Before the sun's true fire could burn through the ice wall, his celestial barrier wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. At the end of the day, although the sun's true fire was powerful, there was only one fire seed. It was too little. Although he could break through the ice wall if he waited a little longer, he wouldn't have enough time. Maybe I can try this? An idea flashed through Lin Feng's mind. He took out a red and blue fruit. The top half of the fruit was fiery red and scorching hot, while the bottom half was icy blue and terrifyingly cold. It was the frosty fire ice fruit that Lin Feng had drawn from the lottery earlier. According to the introduction, this thing was very strange. It would become cold when it came into contact with something hot, but it would become hot when it came into contact with something cold. Lin Feng threw the frosty fire ice fruit at the ice wall. When the fruit came into contact with the ice wall, it suddenly changed. The skin of the fruit flashed red. Under the illumination of the red light, the ice wall suddenly changed. The intense cold air suddenly began to burn. The ice was burning. Under the effect of the frosty fire ice fruit, the ice was transformed into a raging fire. The fire grew bigger and bigger, spreading to the surroundings. The ice and cold became fuel for the fire, burning nonstop. Lin Feng exclaimed, "Indeed, turning ice into burning fire. The colder the ice, the hotter it becomes. This little thing contains some profound principles of reversing yin and yang." The characteristics of the frosty fire ice fruit were somewhat similar to the yin and yang life and death formations method of turning fire into rain and wind into thunder. Lin Feng's heart stirred. He simply put away the sun's true fire seed. As expected, once the sun's true fire disappeared, the temperature of the ice wall should have dropped further. However, this stimulated the frosty fire ice fruit, causing the fire to grow bigger. In a short while, the fire burned a large hole in the ice wall, directly penetrating through the ice wall. The fire didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. Instead, it became more and more intense, wanting to burn the entire ice wall. Lin Feng frowned. This wasn't what he wanted to see. He threw out the sun's true fire seed again. This time, the target was not the ice wall, but the frosty fire ice fruit. Since the frosty fire ice fruit had such a twisted characteristic, Lin Feng had to make good use of it, and once again use the fire to create cold air. Who knew that after the sun's true fire came into contact with the frosty fire ice fruit, the flame didn't turn into cold air? Lin Feng came to a realization. The frosty fire ice fruit also has a limit. It can't transform firepower on the level of the 7 great true fires. Withdrawing the sun's true fire, Lin Feng activated his fury of the immovable Wisdom King. This time he succeeded. After the milky white flame came into contact with the frosty fire ice fruit, it was rapidly transformed into intense cold air. Under the effect of the cold air, the raging fire gradually subsided. The cold air even froze again, sealing the ice wall. Lin Feng put away the fury of the immovable Wisdom King and the frosty fire ice fruit, and jumped in through the big hole in the ice wall. The frosty fire ice fruit was very powerful. It took a very short time to burn through the ice wall. Lin Feng's celestial barrier technique could still hold up at this time. Stopping the celestial barrier technique, Lin Feng sensed for a moment. Although there was a big hole in the ice wall, because there was no longer any magic power or spiritual energy acting on it, the restriction left by the 100-grass ancestor didn't react. It was as if there had been a hole in the ice wall in the first place. Lin Feng smiled slightly, completely relaxed, and walked into the depths of the ice city. The cave that the 100-grass ancestor had opened in the belly of Eternal Spring Peak was extremely large. There were many guards on the outside, but the true location of the pill room was inside the ice city. In the center of the ice city, there was a huge stone house. Lin Feng walked in, and found that the stone house was divided into 2 rooms. The outside room was empty, there was nothing. Lin Feng's nose twitched, and he smelled a faint medicinal fragrance. The medicinal fragrance was very strange. It was full of vitality, but also contained an aura of death. What kind of medicine is this? Lin Feng frowned slightly, walked forward, and pushed open the stone door that led to the inside room. The inside room was more than twice the size of the outside room. Unlike the empty outside room, the inside room was filled with a lot of things. There were 50 large jars, one after another. They were neatly arranged in rows in the room. The medicinal fragrance that Lin Feng smelled earlier came from these 50 large jars. A small stove was set up under each large jar, and green flames burned at the bottom of the jars. Lin Feng took out the mirror of heaven and earth and examined it. He found that the living soil that the 100-grass ancestor had taken away was evenly distributed at the bottom of these 50 large jars. Brewing medicine? Lin Feng walked forward and lifted the lid of one of the jars. Looking down, A cold air instantly rushed from the bottom of Lin Feng's feet to the top of his head. The jars were filled with a thick, black medicinal liquid, which bubbled from time to time. And in the black medicinal liquid, there was a little boy who was only 4 or 5 years old. Fuck. Lin Feng almost sent the urn flying with a kick. I object. How can a Xinxia world play Resident Evil? After carefully examining it with his divine sense, Lin Feng realized that he was wrong. The 100-grass ancestor was crazier and more fucked up than he had imagined. There was a small cauldron condensed from medicinal spiritual qi in the little boy's body. In this illusory small cauldron floated an equally illusory pill, made of spiritual qi. In the beginning, Lin Feng thought that this was the so-called Rinyuan Jindan, but he later realized that this was not the case. This was because the pill gave off a faint aura that could see through life and death, as well as an aura of immortality. In other words, it was somewhat like the golden elixir of the cultivators of the golden elixir period. How is it possible to form the golden elixir at such a young age? Lin Feng shook his head and calmed down. He hasn't even opened up his sea of qi, nor has he built a beer. Although his body is full of spiritual qi, it was all forced into his body from the outside world. He can't even be considered a cultivator. But there is a cauldron in his body, and there is a golden elixir in the cauldron that is forming. How strange. Lin Feng carefully probed the illusory pill with his divine sense and magic. He immediately felt that although there was a bit of the aura of the cultivator's golden elixir, it was full of medicinal power. Rather than calling it a golden elixir, it was more like a medicinal pill. I understand now. The so-called Rinyuan Jindan is not the medicinal pill, but the child as a whole. Lin Feng's face was expressionless, but his eyes were cold. This child is the damn Rinyuan Jindan. It is the cauldron that nurtures the spiritual pill, and also the spiritual pill itself. Lin Feng let out a long breath and sneered. Well done, 100-grass ancestor. You have a good idea, but if I let you get what you want, then I'll be damned. Chapter 159. After Lin Feng carefully explored the condition of the boy's body in the urn, he had already completely understood the real principle of this so-called Rinyuan Jindan. The medicine cauldron in the boy's body was still very different from the cauldron of a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. It could only be called a false cauldron. And the medicine pill condensed in the false cauldron was naturally not a normal golden elixir, but a false cauldron. However, this Rinyuan panacea could indeed help a foundation establishment cultivator improve the success rate of forming the core, and even help a golden elixir period cultivator improve the quality of the golden elixir. The principle was actually similar to the method Xiao Budian's brother used to seize Xiao Budian's supreme beer. When the false cauldron and the false cauldron in the boy's body matured, they would be provided to the cultivators who needed them, and then the cauldron and the false cauldron would be separated from the boy's body by a secret method. For example, the other party was a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator who was unable to condense a cauldron to advance to the late-stage foundation establishment. After obtaining the false cauldron in the boy's body, he could use the false cauldron as a framework, pour his own mana, and finally condense a true cauldron. Then, with the help of the false cauldron that still existed in the cauldron, he could use the same method to form the golden elixir until he successfully advanced to the golden elixir period. Because of the special composition of medicine, the false cauldron contained the two principles of life and nirvana. Not only could it provide the medicinal power of Reiki, but it could also help the cultivator overcome the difficulties of life and death. This was the most important thing. Some late-stage foundation establishment cultivators, who were unable to form the core, also used the same method, but they didn't need a false cauldron, only a false cauldron. And after the cultivators in the golden elixir period introduced the false cauldron and the false cauldron into their body, they could use the false cauldron as the foundation and the powerful medicinal power of the false cauldron as nourishment to obtain a chance to refine the golden elixir. Just like remaking, if the refining was successful, the quality of the golden elixir might be improved to a higher level. However, Lin Feng only needed to explore a little before he found a flaw in it. This method was used to help the cultivators in the golden elixir period improve the quality of the golden elixir, but it could only be used to upgrade the yellow elixir of the 4th grade to the jade elixir of the 3rd grade. If the jade pill wanted to improve, the success rate was too low, close to 0. The vermilion pill, which was above the jade pill, was not even worth mentioning. If this method was used to help late foundation establishment cultivators form their gold core, because it was an opportunistic method of borrowing the power of a false core, even if they succeeded in forming their gold core, they would only be able to obtain a yellow core, the lowest of the 4 grades of the golden elixir. Generally speaking, the better the pill, the stronger the human body's resistance to it. After using this Renyuan Jindan once, it wouldn't work the next time. Therefore, in a sense, the effect of the Renyuan Jindan on cultivators in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm was the most obvious. Depending on the strength of the virtual cauldron, the quality of the alchemy cauldron would be determined. It was even possible to get a top-grade alchemy cauldron. With a top-grade pill cauldron, even if he did not have a void core, he would have a great chance of advancing to the golden elixir period with his own strength. In fact, when the 100 Herbs ancestor first created this secret art, he wanted to work backwards from core formation, from the golden elixir to the pill cauldron, and then to the spirit platform. He wanted to research the method to forge the upper 3 grades of the spirit platform, or even the supreme spirit platform. However, after deducing to the pill cauldron stage, the 100 Herbs ancestor could no longer continue, and could only stop there. After being improved and perfected, the Renyuan Jindan had become what it was now. Although it has all kinds of flaws, it will still be very popular. Lin Feng sighed. The great path of the golden elixir was a matter of life and death. This could be said to be the first major obstacle faced by millions of cultivators in the great heaven primordial world. If they passed, they would enjoy a lifespan of 1,000 years. Even if they could only form a yellow core and were unable to progress further, they would still have a lifespan of 1,000 years and be happy to live a free and unfettered life. If they could not pass, their qi and blood would decline in less than 200 years, and they would become old and frail. In the end, they would pass away and turn into a cup of soil. The difference between the two was simply too great. For cultivators who had successfully advanced to the golden elixir period, whether they formed a yellow core or a green core made a huge difference. Not to mention whether or not they could advance to the middle stage of the golden elixir period. Cultivators who formed a green core could beat their opponents who formed a yellow core, until they were looking for their teeth on the ground. For a sect, if a few cultivators who formed a yellow core could raise the quality of the golden elixir to the level of a green core, their overall combat ability would immediately increase by a level. In the future, if all of them could advance to the middle stage of the golden elixir period, it would be a completely different world. The strength of the entire sect would have a small leap. However, Lin Feng's divine sense swept through all 50 large jars. He was surprised to find that the void cauldron and void core of nearly 30 children in the large jars had been shattered. This kind of shattering should be natural. In other words, it was a natural loss during the process of refining pills. Perhaps it was because the bodies of the children could not bear the medicinal power, or because the void cauldron and void core were not stable enough, or even because the refiner, the 100 Herbs ancestor, made a mistake. But as Lin Feng looked at this scene, his eyes became colder and colder. There would be a time when the medicinal juice in the jars would dry up. Every time the 100 Herbs ancestor came to change the medicine, he would definitely eliminate the children who failed. In other words, the 30 children who failed here had all broken their void cauldron and void core after the 100 Herbs ancestor changed the medicine last time. Lin Feng observed for a moment and found that the rate at which the medicinal juice was being consumed was actually very fast. In a short period of time, 3/5 of the children had already been eliminated. Every time the medicine was changed, a group of children would be eliminated. With such a high elimination rate, for the sake of these 20 children who were on the verge of success, how many people had failed, and how many had already been eliminated? What was the fate of those children who had been eliminated? Lin Feng took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He sensed for a moment and was sure that these large jars were closely connected to the 100 Herbs ancestor's mind. Whether he was saving people or retrieving the breathing soil, he would definitely alert the 100 Herbs ancestor. The magical power restriction here was different from the one in the ice city outside. This so-called Rinyuan Jindan was still in the process of being refined. As the refiner, the 100 Herbs ancestor was even more closely connected to their minds. Therefore, Lin Feng did not dare to risk using the heavenly barrier. Suddenly, Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat and he hit himself. The stone hut quieted down. Only the sound of the medicinal juice in the jars bubbling and then exploding could be heard. Lin Feng hid to the side, but his eyes were not fixed on the door. Instead, he was looking at a corner of the hut, staring at the wall there. After a while, a small bulge suddenly appeared on the greenish-gray stone wall. It was a bulge the size of a grain of sand. Even if an ordinary person were to look closely, they might not be able to notice it. But Lin Feng's eyes were fixed on the small grain that had suddenly appeared on the stone wall. Gradually, something squeezed out of the stone wall. It was a pale gold color, and it was especially eye-catching on the greenish-gray stone wall. It was a grain of sand, a pale gold grain of sand. The grain of sand emitted a faint golden radiance. The radiance became stronger and stronger, and in the end, the entire stone hut was illuminated in a golden color. Within the golden radiance, the grain of sand gradually grew larger, and in the end, it grew to a circumference of 3 meters. At the same time, the grain of sand also became transparent, revealing the 2 figures inside. The golden radiance dispersed, and the enormous grain of sand also disappeared. The 2 people landed on the ground, and both looked at the jars in front of them with serious expressions. One of them was a red-clothed girl whose entire body was like a raging fire. She had crimson hair, crimson eyes, and eyebrows like thin swords. She was the cultivator of the Society of the Strong Gale that he met in the great marsh of the ancient region, Yu Hongyan. At this moment, the red-clothed girl had a gloomy expression. Her entire body was surrounded by an oppressive and resentful aura, as if she was a volcano that could erupt at any time. And beside her stood a white-clothed youth. His figure was thin, and his facial features were handsome. It was Kong Nanhua. At this moment, Kong Nanhua's skin was rosy and his aura was calm. He had already completely recovered his health, and was no longer as sickly as he was in the great marsh of the ancient region. But at this moment, Kong Nanhua also carried a hint of gloom between his brows. Seeing this, Lin Feng was secretly amazed. In Lin Feng's impression, even if back then his face was deathly pale, and he was sweating profusely, and he couldn't even straighten his back, Kong Nanhua's mood was still calm and indifferent. The current Kong Nanhua's mana and aura were perfect and flawless. Compared to that day in the great marsh of the ancient region, it was a level higher. But his person was far from being as lively as he was in the great marsh of the ancient region. The current Kong Nanhua was like an old man with 1 foot in the grave, and had nothing left to live for. Meeting an old friend in a foreign land was originally something worth being happy about. But Lin Feng didn't show himself to meet them. Looking at these 2 people, Lin Feng's brows slightly furrowed. One is still okay, but both of them have this kind of expression. Did something happen on the side of the Society of the Strong Gale? Then why are they here? Yu Hongyan walked in front of the rows of large jars in the stone house and lifted the lids. After seeing the scene inside clearly, he was so angry that his whole body trembled. Those bastards of the 100 Herbs sect, they actually did something like this. Kong Nanhua's gaze swept around the stone house. Last time we were blocked by the ice wall outside and didn't dare to rashly enter. This time we came again, and there was a large hole in the ice wall. It was clearly man-made. The 100 Herbs ancestor didn't react at all. The person who broke the ice wall is very skilled. It's very likely that he's still here. Yu Hongyan lifted the lids of large jars one after another. After a while he let out a cheer. Xiaohuan is fine. Mr. Kong, Xiaohuan is fine. The worry between Kong Nanhua's brows slightly lightened. In order to find the missing Xiaohuan, they went all the way to Eternal Spring Peak, and captured a golden elixir period cultivator of Eternal Spring Peak to interrogate him for information. As a result, the cultivator in the golden core stage, caught by Kong Nanhua, happened to be one of the beneficiaries of the first batch of Rinyuan Jindan, made by the 100 Herbs Master. He was one of the few people on Mount Eternal Spring who knew about it. Under Kong Nanhua's interrogation, the cultivator revealed information about the 100 Herbs ancestors' secret alchemy room. Kong Nanhua and Yu Hongyan came to the cave inside the mountain with the help of a strange treasure that could move space. The other alarms were resolved by Kong Nanhua, except for the ice wall. If they were to forcibly break it, the 100 Herbs ancestor would definitely be alarmed, and the two could only return in vain. Today they came to investigate again, and suddenly found a hole in the ice wall. So they hurried in. Compared to Yu Hongyan's joy, Kong Nanhua was obviously much calmer. It's good that he's fine, but I'm afraid it's still very difficult for us to get him out. These large jars must be closely connected to the 100 Herbs ancestor's mind. If there is any strange movement, the 100 Herbs ancestor will immediately sense it. Yu Hongyan tightly pursed his lips, his fingers clutching the mouth of the jar tightly. Chapter 160. Yu Hongyan looked at the child in the big urn, and gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke. We finally got in, and we found Xiao Huan. Kong Nanhua sighed. The time is not right. If we act rashly and alert the enemy, we won't be able to save Xiao Huan. Yu Hongyan closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened her eyes again, her gaze had regained its calmness and was full of determination. I understand, Mr. Kong. We have already spread the news. People outside will come after hearing it. We will always have a chance. Lin Feng, who was hiding on the side, nodded slightly. He had suspected that someone from the outside had found out about the Rinyuan Jindan, and then spread the news. However, he did not expect that it would be an old acquaintance. Kong Nanhua and Yu Hongyan went out of the stone house together, and Lin Feng followed them quietly. Up. Kong Nanhua took out a silver shuttle and cast a spell. The silver shuttle instantly turned into a white light, circled Kong Nanhua and Yu Hongyan, and broke into the void. It was a void-flying shuttle, a relatively famous magic item of the golden elixir period in the Tianyuan world. It could break through the void and fly for a short distance. Lin Feng looked back at the dozens of big urns in the house. After thinking for a moment, he went out of the ice city, and then used the combination of the fiery ice solid and the true fire of the sun to quickly create cold air to fill the big hole in the ice wall. After finishing all this, Lin Feng took out the black cloud flag and left the secret elixir room hidden inside the mountain. Lin Feng did not rush to meet Kong Nanhua and Yu Hongyan. There were some ideas that he had not sorted out yet, and he needed to think about everything carefully. Leaving Eternal Spring Peak and landing among the peaks of Eternal Spring Mountain, Lin Feng carefully pondered. Just as he was lost in thought, his heart suddenly moved, feeling a wave of demonic energy appear nearby. Lin Feng looked up and saw a tall figure also climbing the peak and looking in the direction of the Eternal Spring Peak. The newcomer was more than 3 meters tall and had an incomparably burly body. His face was ferocious, and there was a light gold king character on his forehead. What was even more bizarre was that this burly man's skin, which was exposed outside his clothes, was shining with a metallic luster. The aura emanating from this person clearly had the aura of a demon, not the magic power of a human cultivator. Demon, a tiger demon. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as a string of information appeared in his mind. The gunmetal tiger demon clan was the bloodline descendant of the primordial great demon white tiger. They had inherited their ancestors' innate ability to control metal. They had copper skin and iron bones, golden teeth and steel claws. Their bodies were impenetrable by swords and spears, and difficult to be injured by spells. They were a demon clan with extremely powerful combat strength. The clan master, Gungjin Tiger King, was a famous demon king in the demon world, and was a top figure among demon kings. Just like the Fire Crows, the gunmetal tiger demon clan's habitat was also a passage connecting the demon world's infinite wasteland to the human world's divine land. The exit was not far south of the Great Hengduan mountain range. Lin Feng looked at the tiger demon and thought, it seems that the batch of Renuan spirit pills that the 100 Herbs Patriarch refined has attracted the attention of many forces. Human cultivators needed to form a golden elixir, and demons needed to form a demon corps to advance from a demon general to a demon commander. Although it was not the same, the Void Cauldron Void Core contained a large amount of spiritual qi and medicinal power, which was also a great supplement for demons. A rumor suddenly came to Lin Feng's mind. I heard that the Gunmetal Tiger King is the 100 Herbs Patriarch's nemesis? It made sense. The 100 Herbs Patriarch's methods were mainly to control plants and herbs, and refine lethal poisons to hurt his enemies. The Gunmetal Tiger King's body was almost indestructible, and did not fear lethal poisons. Moreover, its metal qi was sharp and lethal, which was the nemesis of plants. Among the 5 elements, metal subdued wood. It was not just a saying. The tiger demon looked at the eternal spring peak in the distance and murmured to himself, is the Renuan spirit pill really that powerful? Indeed. Lin Feng suddenly appeared and said, who is it? If the other party had not spoken, he would not have even noticed that someone was so close to him. Realizing this, the tiger demon was shocked. He took 2 steps back and arched his body to look at Lin Feng, ready to attack at any time. Facing the tiger demon, Lin Feng suddenly felt a bloody wind blowing on his face. He was now really facing a ferocious beast that was ready to devour him at any time. After taking the Renuan spirit pill, a cultivator of the 100 Herbs sect has improved the quality of the golden elixir from yellow elixir to green elixir. Lin Feng seemed to turn a blind eye to the tiger demon's appearance that he might attack at any time. He continued to introduce the real use of the Renuan spirit pill. Seeing that Lin Feng did not seem to be hostile, the tiger demon was no longer so nervous, although he still maintained a vigilant posture. On the contrary, although the tiger demon was extremely fierce, it showed self-control and calmness similar to that of a human. He stared at Lin Feng and said slowly, if this Renuan spirit pill is so powerful, won't the big sects of the human race be tempted? Will they allow the pill to be controlled by a medium sect like the 100 Herbs sect? What's more, if this pill really has such a miraculous effect, the 100 Herbs sect should have risen a long time ago. Except for the 3 holy lands, the 100 Herbs sect can look down on the other sects of the human race. Although the tiger demon's facial features were fierce, at this moment, the way he looked at people and the way he spoke were calm and organized. He spoke with assurance and composure, clearly analyzing the interests. Lin Feng smiled and said patiently, there are 2 things that limit the value of the Renuan spirit pill. First, its effect is limited. Second, the success rate of refining is too low. He introduced the refining principle and congenital defects of the Renuan spirit pill in detail. Hearing this, the tiger demon's eyes flickered. Obviously, he was greatly touched. For some human cultivators, the Renuan spirit pill was very important. For the demon race, it was not so valuable, but it was still a very valuable resource. Moreover, if the neighbor, the 100 Herbs sect, continued to grow with the help of the Renuan spirit pill, it would not be a good thing for the Gunmetal Tiger Demon clan. One positive and the other negative, when superimposed, the difference was huge. Almost in an instant, the tiger demon made a decision. He must send this information back to the clan and ask the Gunmetal Tiger King to make a decision. But the way he stared at Lin Feng became more and more dangerous. Who are you? How do you know so clearly? Lin Feng smiled and said, you don't need to know who I am. The tiger demon narrowed his eyes, and the evil aura around him became more and more intense. However, he was not in a hurry to make a move. He really could not figure out Lin Feng's real strength. Seeing the tiger demon's expression, Lin Feng knew that he wanted to capture him, and then slowly interrogate him after returning to his clan. Although the tiger demon's aura was strong, it was easy for Lin Feng to defeat him, so he did not care. If he did not need the tiger demon to go back and inform the clan, Lin Feng would not mind adding a tiger skin mattress to himself. Just when the tiger demon was hesitating whether to make a move or not, there was a sudden thunder in the distant sky. Snort. Hearing the familiar sound of the Brontosaurus horse, Lin Feng suddenly frowned. This guy again? Don't ruin my plan. In a flash of lightning, for Brontosaurus, which looked like small elephants, pulled a giant chariot from the sky. On the chariot, young Master Red Leaf, who had long white hair and was dressed in black, was as eye-catching as ever. He coolly glanced at the gunmetal tiger demon, then coolly glanced at Lin Feng, and then coolly waved his sleeves, coolly saying to Lin Feng, "You don't have any cultivation, but you have the courage to face a gunmetal tiger demon commander. Not bad, not bad." Ha! Lin Feng was stunned, and looked at young Master Red Leaf in confusion. Mr. Red Leaf's snow-white hair was blown by the breeze. He smiled and looked at young Master Red Leaf, who was happily fighting the gunmetal tiger demon. Haha, starting a harem? I hope that your godly spear will become sharper and sharper, and your harem will become bigger and bigger. Lin Feng sneered. Young man, you're so cunning. Chapter 161. Little friend, don't be so unruly. Lin Feng chuckled as he watched Mr. Scarlet Leaf fight the gunmetal tiger demon in midair. He wondered if he should move a stool and a bag of melon seeds to slowly watch the battle. Mr. Scarlet Leaf was still equipped with treasures. Several golden elixir period artifacts complemented each other, giving him extraordinary combat strength. Moreover, he specialized in physical abilities, which made him nimble. The gunmetal tiger demon tried to engage in close combat several times, but he nimbly dodged its attacks. Back then, Daoist Taimu and his gang had set up an immortal trap to trick Mr. Scarlet Leaf. However, in order to make the act more realistic, Daoist Taimu had to use his best skills when fighting against Mr. Scarlet Leaf. Even so, he suffered a crushing defeat. Even his natal golden elixir artifact, the 5 Elements Een Wind Sword, was broken. Therefore, with his superb equipment, Mr. Scarlet Leaf indeed had the ability to defeat an early golden elixir period cultivator. However, against the gunmetal tiger demon before him, he was obviously struggling. At this moment, the gunmetal tiger demon's entire body was covered in glittering metal. It was as if he was wearing a flawless, refined armor that shone dazzlingly under the moonlight. The layer of armor on his body was like an exoskeleton. It had beautiful lines and perfectly fit the tiger demon's body, not affecting its movements at all. His defense was astonishingly high, with his golden elixir period artifacts, other than the 7 Evils dragon-slaying sword, which could make the tiger demon wary. Mr. Scarlet Leaf's other attacks were completely non-existent. Countless metal spikes grew out of the joints of the armor. It looked ferocious and lethal. However, that was not the most important thing. With his superb equipment, even if he could not break through the tiger demon's defense, Mr. Scarlet Leaf could still protect himself. However, during the battle, metal blades would form in the empty air from time to time, stabbing at Mr. Scarlet Leaf from unexpected angles, just like the flying swords of human sword cultivators. These metal blades were completely untraceable. They would often appear out of nowhere and slash at Mr. Scarlet Leaf. Furthermore, it wasn't just 1 or 2 of them. Every time they appeared, there would be more than 10 of them. Then they would surround and attack from all directions, forming a death trap. When Lin Feng saw this, he smiled. This tiger demon's strength is equivalent to a human cultivator's mid-stage golden elixir realm. When a cultivator forms the golden elixir, they can overcome the difficulties of life and death, and live for thousands of years. Besides transforming his unwavering conviction into great courage to overcome the fear between life and death, his body had attained the advanced stage. Looking inside himself, he could sense the slightest changes in his body. Not bones, internal organs, muscles, and meridians, but even the tinier blood vessels and acupoints. Metal was immortal and immortal. It didn't mean that the body was as hard as steel, and wouldn't be damaged even after being chopped by knives or axes. Instead, once the body suffered even the slightest damage, the person would be able to sense it and come up with countermeasures to repair and recuperate. The slightest damage might seem insignificant, but it was actually the root cause of the human body's aging and decay. It was precisely because the slightest damage wasn't easy to detect that people didn't pay much attention to it. If someone cut their arm with a knife, everyone knew that they had to stop the bleeding, apply medicine, and treat it. As long as they put in the effort, they would recover one day. However, if the hidden acupoints in the body were injured and the capillaries were cracked, cultivators below the golden elixir period wouldn't be able to sense it and could only let it go. As a result, the damage couldn't be treated in time and would eventually lead to death. A slightest damage didn't matter, but when accumulated, it would eventually lead to the end of the human body. Cultivators who formed the golden elixir could look inside their body and sense the slightest damage so that they could treat it in time. Advanced stage meant immortality. Advanced stage immortality was the early stage of the golden elixir. When Lin Feng first formed his gold core, he also went through a similar process. He wouldn't have known if he hadn't seen it, but he was shocked when he saw it. If his body was a 1,000-mile-long dike, then there were already many tiny cracks in the interior of this dike. It was like an ant's nest that couldn't be any smaller. However, a 1,000-mile dam could collapse because of an ant's nest. If this went on for a long time, no matter how strong the dam was, it would still collapse one day. If an early-stage golden elixir cultivator could survive the fire tribulation, he could advance to the middle stage of the golden elixir. The characteristic of the middle stage of the golden elixir was advanced stage. Advanced stage meant comprehending the endless mysteries of the universe and the truth of heaven and earth, truly communicating with heaven and earth. At this stage, cultivators could freely control the spiritual energy in the world to a certain extent. They could also separate the spiritual energy they needed and use it. The gunmetal tiger in front of him had separated the metal-attributed spiritual energy in the air and condensed it into a sharp blade. Under the control of his mind, it freely attacked Mr. Red Leaf. Advanced stage immortality. Advanced stage immortality was the middle stage of the golden elixir. Because cultivators could freely control the spiritual energy in the world within a certain range and use it as their own, if a middle-stage golden elixir cultivator were to fight with an early-stage golden elixir cultivator, the latter would completely crush the latter in terms of the total amount of magical power, let alone other factors. From the smallest to the largest, after comprehending it, the cultivator could try to pass the wind tribulation and advance to the late stage of the golden elixir. Mr. Red Leaf's strength could surpass an early-stage golden elixir cultivator like Taoist Tai Mu, who had a shallow foundation. But when facing a middle-stage golden elixir cultivator, he had to take it easy. Not to mention that this gunmetal tiger was also one of the best in the middle stage of the golden elixir. However, the two of them had made a big noise. It was impossible to hide a battle in front of the 100 Herbs sect from the 100 Herbs ancestor. For the 100 Herbs ancestor, who was in the Yuanying stage, the strength of these two was not worthy of his attention. But now, the Renyuan Jindan was about to be refined, and the news had been leaked, so the 100 Herbs ancestor had to be careful. Suddenly, a white mist flew out from the top of the eternal spring peak. It was hazy and hard to see clearly in the night sky, but everyone could feel the horrifying power contained in it. The white mist was like a whip, fiercely lashing at the gunmetal tiger. Before it got close, it had already brought up a gust of wind. The wind was filled with the fragrance of herbs, making people dizzy after smelling it. The gunmetal tiger demon's expression changed drastically. When he said that the 100 Herbs ancestor was not good at fighting, he meant that he was a nascent soul cultivator at the same level as him. For the 100 Herbs ancestor to take care of an opponent at the golden core stage was a piece of cake. The gunmetal tiger was indeed the nemesis of the 100 Herbs sect. But to restrain the 100 Herbs ancestor, only the gunmetal tiger king could do it. Seeing the white mist coming, Sir Scarlet Leaf frowned, as if he was dissatisfied that the opponent had interrupted his fight with the tiger. But soon his frown relaxed. Forget it. This is the 100 Herbs ancestor's territory. I'll just do him a favor. But since Xiao Man wants this tiger as a pet, I'll have to help her get it after this is over. Thinking of this, Sir Scarlet Leaf put away his ritual implement and retreated to the side, watching the 100 Herbs ancestor capture the gunmetal tiger. Facing the 100 Herbs ancestor's attack, The gunmetal tiger did not dare to hesitate. He took out something that looked like a bone stick and injected his monster power into it. The bone stick immediately shone with a golden light. The golden light shot into the sky, carrying the gunmetal tiger far away in an attempt to avoid the whip of mist. So it's a monster of the gunmetal tiger tribe. How dare you behave so atrociously in front of the 100 Herbs sect? Don't even think about running away. The calm voice of an old man came from the top of Eternal Spring Peak. It was the 100 Herbs ancestor. The white mist whip made a turn in the air and chased after the golden light. It seemed to be very far away, but with a shake of the whip in the air, it traversed dozens of miles in an instant, catching up to the tiger's back and lashing out at its face. The women on Sir Scarlet Leaf's Azure Thunder War Chariot all gasped at the sight. Is this the 100 Herbs ancestor's ability to travel through space? That's right. Sir Scarlet Leaf nodded and said calmly. But it's nothing special. As long as I succeed in forming my gold core, I'll have a way to cultivate a secret technique. By then, traveling through space won't be a problem. Xiang Lanying sighed. You're amazing, husband. Sir Scarlet Leaf smiled. I still have many tricks up my sleeves. You'll find out about them one by one in the future. As he was speaking, in the distant sky, the 100 Herbs ancestor's white mist whip suddenly shook for no reason, and then it disappeared right in front of the tiger. In the next moment, the whip reappeared in the air, but the tiger had already taken the opportunity to flee on the golden light, disappearing into the horizon. Xiang Lanying asked in surprise, Husband, what's going on? Sir Scarlet Leaf was tongue-tied. He didn't understand what just happened. The white mist whip couldn't catch up to the tiger, and the 100 Herbs ancestor couldn't leave the mountain to chase after the tiger for the sake of the Renyuan Jindan. He could only watch as the cooked duck flew away. With the tiger running away, Sir Scarlet Leaf couldn't fulfill the promise he made to his woman. He was in a bad mood. Where's that person? Only then did he remember Lin Feng, whom he had chosen as his coachman. He glanced around but found Lin Feng gone. Sir Scarlet Leaf held his breath and became even more depressed. What a bunch of unappreciative fools. Every one of them is against me. In the grand hall at the top of Eternal Spring Peak, the 100 Herbs ancestor also looked gloomy. Who on earth interrupted my spell and traveled through space to chase after that monster? Beside him, Chu Bin looked worried. Could it be that there's a Yuanian cultivator spying on us and interfered with your spell? The 100 Herbs ancestor frowned slightly. I don't know, but this person isn't simple. His timing was perfect, and he was decisive. He disappeared in a flash. I almost thought that my magical power was unstable, and I missed. The key now is, how much does the gunmetal tiger know? Does he know about the Renyuan Jindan? The 100 Herbs ancestor said slowly. If he reports it to the old monster of the gunmetal tiger tribe, we'll be in trouble. Chu Bin also looked serious. Although the 100 Herbs ancestor didn't say it, he knew clearly that the 100 Herbs ancestor was no match for the gunmetal tiger king, even with the help of the mountain protecting formation. My master is in closed-door training and can't come here in a short time. If he reports it to the other elders in the sect, the news of the Renyuan Jindan will be exposed. Chu Bin said worriedly. The 100 Herbs ancestor said, It doesn't matter. I remember that your master has a celestial device called the Desolation Element 9 Smelting Heavenly Thunder Net. With the help of this treasure, I can defeat that evil tiger. Go back to the mountain quickly and ask your master to lend this treasure to me. Chu Bin nodded and left the Eternal Spring Peak on his sword without saying goodbye to his fellow disciples. He rushed back to the Wilderness Sword Sect. Outside the Eternal Spring Peak, on the top of a barren mountain, Lin Feng watched Chu Bin's red sword light flying away and thought, should I call for help? Chapter 162. Lin Feng watched the red sword light leaving Eternal Spring Peak and heading to the north. He thought, did the practitioner from the Wilderness Sword Sect go to ask for help? It was rumored that someone from the Wilderness Sword Sect had come to investigate and concluded that the Renyuan Panacea was just a rumor. Now it had been proven that the conclusion was wrong. If the 100 Herb ancestor hid the truth before, Now that he has asked for help, he has been exposed. Lin Feng thought. Although the Tiger King brought him great pressure, the Hundred-Herb ancestor may not be able to get away with it after the Wilderness Sword sect holds him responsible. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. So the biggest possibility is that someone in the Wilderness Sword sect has colluded with him. Last time someone came to ask about the Tiger King, it was this person who covered up for him in the Wilderness Sword sect. There were not many people like this, otherwise the Renyuan panacea would not be enough. But the person's cultivation and status were not low. It was most likely a Yuanying ancestor in the Wilderness Sword sect. Now facing the threat of the Tiger King, the Hundred-Herb ancestor would definitely ask for help. But the Yuanying ancestor, who colluded with him in the Wilderness Sword sect, would probably not be able to come by himself. Otherwise, the Hundred-Herb ancestor could just inform the Hundred-Herb ancestor through a sound-transmitting celestial device. There was no need for him to send someone back in person. If he sent someone back, it was very likely that he wanted to take something that could help the Hundred-Herb ancestor fight against the Tiger King. After thinking for a while, Lin Feng gradually came up with an idea. I hope that tiger will not let me down. Lin Feng settled down and began to wait patiently. The Tiger King did not let Lin Feng wait for too long. 3 days later, in the mountains to the south of Eternal Spring Peak, thousands of tigers roared. Among the continuous tiger roars, there was an ear-piercing sound like metal rubbing against each other. Thousands of tiger roars gathered together and were deafening. The sharp sound was like a big hand grabbing everyone's heart on Eternal Spring Peak, kneading and twisting it into a ball. In the hall at the top of the peak, the Hundred-Herb ancestor snorted heavily with a dignified look. His cold snort turned into a tidal wave of sound, directly suppressing the roars of the thousands of gunmetal tiger demons outside. In the forest, all the roaring tiger demons felt as if their chests were being pressed down hard by someone. Their breath was stuck in their throats, but they couldn't go up. On the Eternal Spring Peak, the disciples of the Hundred-Herb sect cheered in unison. Ancestor's power is boundless. Before he could finish speaking, a burst of laughter suddenly came from the sky south of Mount Eternal Spring. Old man Hundred-Herbs, you're still as useless as ever. His loud laughter shook the disciples of the Hundred-Herb sect, causing them to see stars. Some of the weaker ones directly fell to the ground. The Hundred-Herbs patriarch's face was ashen. What a tiger demon! How dare you invade my Eternal Spring Peak? Although he was angry, his voice could not cover the other party's laughter. Instead, it made the other party even more arrogant. The Hundred-Herb's forefather formed a hand seal, and the white mist that enveloped Eternal Spring Peak suddenly changed. The white mist sank and connected with the ground. The bottom of the mist gradually turned from white to yellow, as if it was soil. Halfway up the mountain, the center of the mist turned from white to emerald green, as if the grass was green and the forest was lush. At the top of the mountain, colorful purples and reds emerged from the white. It was like a sea of blooming flowers, dazzling and dazzling. The mist enveloped Eternal Spring Peak, and immediately isolated the laughter from the distant horizon. It could no longer harm the disciples of the Hundred-Herb sect on the mountain. This was the Hundred-Herb's patriarch, completely activating the sect's protective formation. Its power immediately increased by more than one level. Lin Feng stood at the top of a barren mountain in the distance, and nodded to himself as he watched this scene. A protective formation controlled by a Yuanying cultivator is truly extraordinary. He looked to the south and heard endless laughter from the clouds in the sky. The Eternal Spring Repellent Formation, huh? A streak of golden light shot out from the clouds and landed in the forest south of Eternal Spring Peak. Thousands of gunmetal tiger demons were scattered among the mountains. Their entire bodies shone with a metallic luster, dazzling and eye-catching under the sunlight. They looked like an armored army. The demon soldier tiger demons, who were equivalent to human chi condensation cultivators, were unable to assume human form. They were all sprawled on the ground. As for the demon general level gunmetal tiger demons, they were all standing on their hind legs. Their feet were on the ground, but they still looked more like tigers than humans. Their bodies were also extremely huge. When they stood on the ground, they were more than 6 meters tall. The few tiger demons in the center were all demon commander level. Their humanoid features were already very obvious. As they stood there, they were not particularly huge. They were not even as tall and mighty as the demon generals beside them. However, they radiated with metal essence. It was as if their bodies were covered in steel blades that could cut through metal and rock. Their auras were far more powerful than the demon general level tiger demons. The golden light in the sky landed in the middle of these tiger demons. The golden light dissipated, revealing the figure of a platinum tiger. All the gunmetal tiger demons in the surroundings, regardless of their cultivation, and whether they had taken human form or not, prostrated themselves on the ground respectfully. "Greetings, my king." This platinum tiger did not assume human form. From the outside, apart from the metallic luster that flashed all over its body, it looked exactly like a tiger. It was not big either. It was less than 3 meters long. There was not much terrifying demonic power flowing out of its body. However, the actions of the other gunmetal tiger demons already made it clear that this ferocious platinum tiger was the gunmetal tiger king. The clan leader of the gunmetal tiger demon that had just caused the 100 Herbs ancestor to suffer a setback and had to use the mountain protecting formation to block it. In the southern part of the Great Hungduan mountain range, the gunmetal tiger king's name was enough to stop children from crying at night. Even in the territory of the demon race in the Tianhuang continent, the gunmetal tiger king was one of the best among the demon kings. It was especially powerful in combat. Many demon kings of the same level did not dare to provoke it. The gunmetal tiger king looked at the eternal spring mountain range in the distance and said with a smile, "100 Herbs ancestor is quite smart." He completely activated the protective array as soon as I arrived. "Unfortunately, I am determined to win today. No matter how hard he tries, it's all for naught." A demon commander next to him stepped forward and said, "My king, the evil tiger king is incompetent. That human's words cannot be verified. Moreover, that person is quite mysterious. He may have other plans." The tiger demon who spoke was called the evil tiger demon commander. He was the tiger demon who escaped from the hands of the 100 Herbs ancestor with Lin Feng's help. He reported the news of the Renyuan Jindan to the Gungjin Tiger King, and the Gungjin Tiger King immediately decided to attack Eternal Spring Peak. Hearing the evil tiger demon commander's suggestion, the gunmetal tiger king smiled and said, "Even if there is no Renyuan Jindan, it is still a good thing to get rid of the Eternal Spring Mountain. The purple-robed man you mentioned must have his own plans. However, I am not afraid at all. Whatever means you have, just do it." When the gunmetal tiger king said this, his body revealed an incomparably confident momentum. The group of tiger demons said in unison, "Yes, my king." The gunmetal tiger king nodded slightly and said, "The only thing I need to consider is how the Wilderness Sword sect will react. If it were not for the Wilderness Sword sect, I would have already razed the Eternal Spring Mountain to the ground. If the Renyuan Jindan really exists, the herbal sect has violated the taboo of the Wilderness Sword sect by concealing it and trying to have it privately. The herbal sect will feel guilty and hesitate to inform the Wilderness Sword sect of the news of our tribe's attack. In this way, even if the Wilderness Sword sect gets the news and rushes here, I would have already razed the Eternal Spring Mountain and returned to the Infinite Region." The gunmetal tiger king raised his paw and stretched it out. "If the Renyuan Jindan does not exist, the Wilderness Sword sect's reinforcements will arrive soon." The evil tiger demon commander thought for a while and said, "Then let's try to attack the mountain first and see the 100 Herbs sect's reaction." The gunmetal tiger king nodded slightly and said, "Then let's all release the poltergeist ghosts and try the eternal spring array of the 100 Herbs sect." As he gave the order, the group of tiger demons under his command all agreed. They walked out of the forest and came to the periphery of the array that covered the Eternal Spring Mountain. Thousands of tiger demons opened their bloody mouths and spat out clouds of black fog. The black fog that was spat out by all the tiger demons joined together and formed a boundless expanse. In the black fog, countless shadows flashed and swayed as they walked out of the black fog. There were humans and monsters of different races coming out of the black fog, But no matter what race they were, their bodies were blurry and translucent. These people and monsters all looked ferocious and terrifying. Their eyes emitted a cruel green light as they stared at the Eternal Spring Mountain in front of them. On the Eternal Spring Mountain, the cultivators of the 100 Herbs sect saw this scene and felt their scalps go numb. Poltergeist ghosts. So many poltergeist ghosts. As the saying went, to help a tiger do evil is to become a poltergeist ghost. Legend had it that the tiger had the power to control hundreds of poltergeist ghosts. Those who were eaten by the tiger would become poltergeist ghosts and follow the tiger to do evil, creating more poltergeist ghosts. Not only the gunmetal tiger tribe, but all the tiger demons also had a divine sense. They could turn the souls of the creatures they killed, whether human or demon, into ghost servants and follow them loyally. It was as if they had the skill to control ghosts. Usually, they would turn into black fog and keep it in their bodies. When needed, they could release it to kill the enemy. It was not easy to accumulate poltergeist ghosts, but they were consumables after all. The gunmetal tiger tribe used the poltergeist ghosts to attack the mountain. On the one hand, it could wear down the power of the Eternal Spring Formation, and on the other hand, it would not get involved in the battle. In this way, if the Wilderness Sword sect came to help quickly, the gunmetal tiger tribe could withdraw from the battlefield and return to the infinite wilderness as soon as it got the news. It would not have to worry about being entangled by the cultivators of the 100 Herbs sect and being attacked from both sides. Through the poltergeist ghost's tentative attacks and the reaction of the ancestor of the 100 Herbs, it could be inferred whether he had asked for help from the Wilderness Sword sect immediately. Lin Feng watched from the side and thought, this poltergeist ghost also retained its soul, dharma power and cultivation. However, it is similar to Sikong Nan's night walking skill of 100 ghosts. The poltergeist ghost is very murderous, but it has lost its mind and the ability to think independently. In this aspect, it is not as good as the netherworld puppet. The sun was shining brightly at noon, but a large number of poltergeist ghosts gathered together, causing a sea of death chi that covered the sky and the sun. Even the sun, which was the nemesis of evil ghosts, seemed to be dimmed. Under the control of the tiger demons, the poltergeist ghosts, who had lost their mind and only had the instinct to kill, let out a sharp ghost howl and rushed into the big formation under the Eternal Spring Peak. Lin Feng was refreshed. It's about to start. Chapter 163. The 100 Herbs sect's Tao, techniques, and divine abilities were not good at attacking, and the Eternal Spring spell formation's destructive power was also not sharp enough. However, as the 100 Herbs sect's great protective formation, its great divine ability that borrowed the power of the heaven and earth was not something that ordinary cultivators could contend against. Even if there were many cultivators, it was the same unless they could form a formation like the great Zhou Shenwu army and gather everyone's mana in one place. But there was a saying that quantitative change could lead to qualitative change. When the numbers reached a terrifying number, the situation couldn't be predicted with common sense. Over 1,000 tiger demons released all the ghosts they had accumulated at once. There were over 10,000 of them. There were more than 10,000 poltergeist ghosts, including a large number of Foundation Establishment stage poltergeist ghosts. There were even quite a few Golden Core stage poltergeist ghosts. This energy was driven by a frenzied killing intent, transforming into a dark torrent that rushed toward the Eternal Spring Reverse Array at the foot of the Eternal Spring Peak. The densely packed ghosts made everyone's scalp go numb. At the foot of Eternal Spring Mountain, the yellow cloud was the first restriction of the Eternal Spring defensive formation. It contained dense earth elemental essence, thick and condensed. All the intruders who entered the yellow cloud would be unable to move even an inch due to the pressure of the earth element essence. It was as if their entire body was carrying 1,000 kilograms of weight. Those with weak cultivations would have all the bones in their body crushed, or even be crushed into a meat patty. Although the ghosts didn't have physical bodies and only had souls, the yellow cloud of the formation was still effective against souls. Upon entering the formation, the poltergeist ghosts' movements immediately became jerky and slow. Every step forward was incomparably difficult. But there were too many of them. They were like an endless wave that came one after another. The ghost wave ignored all obstructions and rapidly advanced. Those that were stopped by the yellow cloud were immediately knocked over by the ghosts behind them, and then trampled over. The ghosts didn't care about the lives of their companions, and just kept advancing. The ghosts that were trampled to death didn't completely dissipate. Instead, they turned into black mist, and were absorbed by the other ghosts to strengthen themselves. In the formation, the number of ghosts decreased rapidly. The weaker ones were quickly eliminated. Almost half of the 10,000 ghosts were lost, leaving only 5,000. However, the remaining 5,000 poltergeist ghosts were all elites. Not only that, but the essence chi of the weaker poltergeist ghosts that had been crushed was all devoured by the other poltergeist ghosts, causing the already strong poltergeist ghosts to become even stronger. Although their numbers had decreased, their strength had not. When Lin Feng saw this, he laughed soundlessly. I wonder how the 100 Herbs ancestor is feeling right now. Through his eternal spring reversing sky formation, these poltergeist ghosts are like steel that has been quenched. Their quality is even higher. In the great hall at the top of Eternal Spring Peak, the 100 Herbs ancestor was no longer in the mood to sit on the prayer mat. He stood expressionlessly in the center of the great hall, his spiritual sense closely connected to the Eternal Spring defensive formation, paying close attention to the changes of the ghosts within. These poltergeist ghosts were only in the golden elixir period at most, so the 100 Herbs ancestor could easily kill them. However, the Gung Metal Tiger King would definitely be delighted to see this. As long as the 100 Herbs ancestor revealed the slightest opening, he would immediately strike and tear him to pieces. The poltergeist army, which had lost almost half of its members, had already reached the waist of Eternal Spring Peak. They passed through the yellow clouds at the foot of the mountain and entered the dark green clouds at the center of the mountain. As soon as they entered the dark green clouds, the poltergeist ghosts all paused. The strong aura of life within the dark green clouds was truly a mortal enemy to these ghosts. It was as if they were in a furnace. The exuberant vitality even allowed some of the Jindan stage ghosts with condensed souls and strong wills to temporarily regain their memories and sanity. Looking at the miserable state they were in, everyone was filled with sorrow and burst into tears. Some of them even turned to look at the tiger demons at the foot of the mountain, their eyes filled with anger and hatred. Sensing the changes in their poltergeist ghosts, the Gung Metal Tiger demons frowned slightly. Clearly, they had not expected the Eternal Spring reversing sky formation to have such an effect. The Gung Metal Tiger King lazily glanced at the dark green clouds at the waist of the mountain and grinned carelessly. He raised his head to the sky and let out an earth-shattering howl. The howl seemed to be filled with boundless magic. When the poltergeist ghosts in the dark green clouds heard this howl, they all calmed down. The poltergeist ghosts that had temporarily regained their consciousness gradually became confused and lost their consciousness again. Their bodies once again emitted killing intent and viciousness, but they no longer had their own thoughts. They once again became poltergeist ghosts that only knew how to listen to the tiger demons. The 100 Herbs ancestor watched this scene expressionlessly. He formed a seal with his right hand. Countless thorny vines suddenly sprouted out of the dark green clouds. They were dark green with a faint purple glow. The vines grew wildly and instantly covered the waist of Eternal Spring Peak, binding all the poltergeist ghosts. As the purple light flowed, many poltergeist ghosts looked dispirited and gradually lost their spirit. The Foundation establishment poltergeist ghosts in particular could not do anything in front of the vines. Lin Feng watched from afar and his heart stirred. These vines seemed to specialize in harming the souls of others. The tiger demons at the foot of the mountain also frowned. Compared to the yellow clouds at the foot of the mountain, the dark green clouds at the waist of the mountain were the real threat to the poltergeist ghosts. The Gung Metal Tiger King glanced and nodded slightly. So it's the soul-eroding vine. It specialized in eroding the souls of living beings. This thing is specialized in restraining our poltergeist ghosts. The Fiend Tiger Demon Commander grunted. Subordinate will break it. With that, he activated his demon chi. Among the poltergeist ghosts on the mountain, one of the golden elixir period poltergeist ghosts instantly changed. This golden elixir period poltergeist ghost was devoured by the fiend tiger demon commander and turned into poltergeist ghosts. When he was alive, he was a human cultivator that specialized in fire magic. This poltergeist let out a sharp howl and spat out endless flames. The flames were pale white in color, but did not have any heat. Instead, they were extremely cold. The pale white flames landed on the soul-eroding vine and instantly started burning. With the magic power of the eternal spring petrifying formation, the soul-eroding vine grew endlessly. Even the flames could not burn them. However, the group of poltergeist ghosts took this opportunity to rush towards the place where the flames were the strongest. The pale white flames were not blazing young flames, but flames that were filled with qi. Not only were the poltergeist ghosts not afraid of the flames, they were even more terrifying, as if they were on drugs. More than 10 golden elixir period poltergeist ghosts acted as a sharp knife to open a path in front of them. With the help of the fire, they forcefully opened a gap in the soul-eroding vine's defense line. Many Foundation establishment poltergeist ghosts followed behind to expand their gains. The gap became bigger and bigger, until the remaining chi-refining poltergeist ghosts formed a large army and crushed the soul-eroding vine's defense line like a tsunami. The aura of living beings was the nemesis of ghosts, but conversely, the eerie ghost aura would also cause adverse effects to plants. Under the effect of the poltergeist ghost's eerie death aura, many plants in the eternal spring petrifying formation gradually withered. The group of golden elixir period poltergeist ghosts displayed their abilities and used all the techniques they were proud of when they were alive. They broke through part of the green cloud barrier on the mountainside and rushed into the colorful cloud at the mountaintop. The many poltergeist ghosts behind them followed closely behind and attacked the last line of defense of the eternal spring petrifying formation. Lin Feng watched this scene and frowned deeply. He stared at Eternal Spring Peak. I heard that the main purpose of the 100 Herbs Sect's Eternal Spring Petrifying Formation is to transform plants and grow spirit herbs, not to fight. But no matter how bad it is at killing and fighting, the one in charge is the 100 Herbs ancestor. He's a Yuanian cultivator. How can he be such a good-for-nothing? He let a few golden elixir period poltergeist ghosts lead a team, and they're about to kill their way to our doorstep? Lin Feng controlled his temper and observed patiently. However, the gung metal tiger king at the foot of the mountain didn't seem to feel that anything was wrong. He waved his paw lazily. Let's go. If we knew that the 100 Herbs ancestor was such a good-for-nothing, we would have destroyed his eternal spring peak a few hundred years ago. The group of tiger demons agreed in unison and revealed bloodthirsty smiles on their faces. They howled and pounced towards Eternal Spring Peak. After charging into the yellowish-brown clouds at the foot of the mountain, the bodies of all the tiger demons emitted a dazzling golden light. As they flashed, they were like countless steel knives that cut the yellow clouds into pieces. Kill! The tiger demons charged halfway up the mountain and killed their way into the dark green clouds. They originally thought that the poltergeist ghosts had cleared the path for them, but when they stepped into the dark green clouds, countless black vines suddenly appeared. Different from the greenish-purple soul-eroding vines from before, these black vines were swollen with many small red lumps. When the vines wrapped around the tiger demons, the lumps ruptured one by one, and a red liquid that looked like pus and blood flowed out. When the red liquid dripped onto the gung metal tiger demon's armor-like skin, it made a sizzling sound and thick smoke rose into the air. The tiger demon's iron bones and steel skin couldn't resist the corrosion of the red liquid and melted. When the red liquid pierced through the skin and came into contact with the tiger demon's flesh, they all let out miserable howls. They struggled with all their might, trying to use their sharp claws that could easily crush mountain rocks to sever the black vines that flowed with the red liquid. However, only the demon commander-level tiger demons could break the vines with a single swipe. Most of the remaining tiger demons were powerless. Whether it was their steel teeth or sharp claws, or the sharp metal blades that grew out of their bodies, none of them could sever the black vines. Not only were the vines tough, They were also incomparably sturdy. In the great hall at the top of Eternal Spring Peak, the 100 Herbs ancestor finally smiled. Evil beasts are evil beasts after all. No matter how much they look like humans, they're not real humans. With just a little trick, they took the bait. If I knew that your gunmetal tiger clan was a hidden danger, how could I not have made preparations? This iron blood vine is a mutated species that I obtained after traversing thousands of miles of divine land in search of all kinds of strange flowers and grafting for many years. It's specifically made to deal with your gunmetal tiger clan. The group of tiger demons also seemed to realize that something was wrong. They wanted to retreat down the mountain, but the earthy yellow mist that seemed so fragile when they first arrived suddenly became denser and denser by 100 times. If the earthy yellow mist was said to be dirt when the wandering ghosts and tiger demons attacked the mountain personally, then it was now 10,000-year-old granite. Clearly, he had purposely paralyzed the tiger demons in order to completely cut off their path of retreat. The 100 Herbs ancestor laughed softly. Today, I'm going to kill most of your gunmetal tiger clan's fighting force here and completely eliminate this hidden danger. The situation on Eternal Spring Peak suddenly changed. Seeing this, Lin Feng thought to himself, this 100 Herbs ancestor sure is ambitious. He turned to look at the gunmetal tiger king at the foot of the mountain. The 100 Herbs ancestor has finally shown his trump card. Then, did you really fall for it? The seemingly arrogant gunmetal tiger king, who had fallen for the 100 Herbs ancestor's trap, and was about to kill thousands of his clansmen in the Eternal Spring defensive formation, finally stood up from the ground lazily. Old 100 Herbs ghost, you're the one who fell for it. Chapter 164. Humans always like to think they're smart. The gunmetal tiger king, who had been lying lazily on the grass, finally stood up. Its tiger eyes stared at the Eternal Spring Peak, full of ridicule. You think this tiger king doesn't know that you were pretending to be weak? I was just beating you at your own game. Don't even think about touching a single one of my clansmen. On the other hand, your 100 Herbs sect will be exterminated today. The gunmetal tiger king let out a long roar, causing the entire Eternal Spring Peak to shake. He raised his front claws and grabbed at Eternal Spring Peak. Demonic energy surged and countless rays of golden light flashed, condensing into a huge claw made of pure metal on the front claws of the gunmetal tiger king. It was really huge, directly grabbing the entire Eternal Spring Peak. The huge mountain that was over 1,000 meters tall was grabbed by a huge metal claw. This claw almost scattered the thick mist that shrouded Eternal Spring Peak. The gunmetal tiger king's body size did not change at all. Compared to the huge metal claw, it was simply too small. If one looked down from the sky, they would not be able to see the gunmetal tiger king's figure. It would only make people think that a huge claw had extended from the ground. Lin Feng frowned slightly when he saw this scene from afar. What terrifying power! No wonder he is so famous. Ever since he came to this world, excluding Yin Mingyue, Long Yi and Tunten, Lin Feng had come into close contact with a total of 3 Yuanying cultivators. They were the Xiandao sect's ancestor, Pu Beizi, the 100 Herbs ancestor, and the gunmetal tiger king. Of these 2 people and 1 demon, the most powerful was undoubtedly the ferocious gunmetal tiger king. The gunmetal tiger king looked at the Eternal Spring petrification formation that was bitterly resisting his huge metal claw, and sneered. 100 Herbs ghost, why do you think that I let my clansmen enter the formation? Thousands of ghosts, and over 1,000 of my clansmen. With so many interfering factors in the Eternal Spring petrification formation, can you still control the formation as you wish? The smile on the 100 Herbs ancestor's face had already disappeared. Only now did he realize that he had made a huge mistake. Formations, because they could borrow a large amount of spiritual energy from the vast heaven and earth, were extremely powerful. They were the best among the Dharma spells and divine abilities of the same level. But their weakness was that apart from being unable to move, it was more troublesome to set up the formation. The more powerful the formation, the more troublesome it was to set it up. Setting up an array required a high degree of precision. If there was even the slightest deviation, all the previous efforts would be wasted. The 100 Herbs ancestor's own cultivation was insufficient, so he could only rely on the eternal spring reverberating formation to deal with the gunmetal tiger king. This required the eternal spring reverberating formation to be able to unleash its full power. However, there were over 1,000 tiger demons and a large number of haunted ghosts stuffed into the eternal spring defensive formation. Of course, it wouldn't affect the formation's operation, but it definitely had to divert some attention to take care of them. Otherwise, these tiger demons and haunted ghosts would quickly break through the formation. But under such circumstances, facing the powerful gunmetal tiger king, it was unavoidably powerless. The gunmetal tiger king's violent attack could definitely break through the eternal spring defensive formation before the 100 Herbs ancestor could kill the tiger demons in the formation. Lin Feng looked at the gunmetal tiger king, who used its huge claws to fight against the 100 Herbs sect's mountain protecting formation. The huge steel claws did not simply suppress the clouds with great strength, but from the huge claws, sharp metal essence constantly overflowed, destroying the formation in all directions. The metal essence, which had the strongest killing power, could definitely cause additional damage to the eternal spring defensive formation of the wood attribute. The clouds and mist that protected the mountain were quickly dissipating at a speed visible to the naked eye. The gunmetal tiger king laughed and said, "Moreover, your actions revealed your guilty conscience. The Wilderness Sword sect won't care about you, right? If the Wilderness Sword sect is already on the way to help, you can slowly dawdle with me and delay the time. 100 Herbs old man, you are in a hurry to finish this battle, but it just happens that you let me know your actual situation. Without the hidden danger of the Wilderness Sword sect, it is easy for me to break your formation. At most, it will just take a little time." The 100 Herbs ancestor thought. "First, I will cut off your wings. When Chu Bin sends the Desolation Element 9 smelting thunder net, then it will be the real time to fight with you." He didn't say anything as he continued to push the power of the Eternal Spring returning sky formation to defend against the gunmetal tiger king's attacks. At the same time, the many powerful plants in the formation took the time to kill the tiger demon inside the formation. Seeing this, Lin Feng thought, if the 100 Herbs ancestor wants to survive this disaster, it will depend on the reinforcements of the Wilderness Sword sect. But, Lin Feng sneered, just because you refined the Renyuan Jindan, do you think I will let you do what you want? Although he did not know how long it would take for Chu Bin to go to the Wilderness Sword sect and back, since he made this trip, it meant that the 100 Herbs ancestor had calculated the time and should be able to help the 100 Herbs sect survive this disaster. The gunmetal tiger tribe was already in front of them. If Chu Bin's trip went smoothly, and he returned as the 100 Herbs ancestor wished, then he should arrive soon. Lin Feng turned his head and glanced at the gunmetal tiger king who was attacking the mountain. Then he waved the black cloud flag and temporarily left the Eternal Spring Peak. Along the route of the Eternal Spring Peak to the Wilderness Sword sect, he went north and stopped on a mountain peak. To be safe, my body also needs to come here. Lin Feng pointed his right index finger at his forehead and launched the Two Realms Void technique. The space slightly shook, and the body of the god of war doppelganger disappeared. It was replaced by another Lin Feng, but it was his body. With Lin Feng's current level of cultivation, the Two-World Void technique also has a casting range limit. The only exception is that he can switch places with his main body and the god of war clone at any time and any place without being restricted by the distance. It would be great if I could have another outer body doppelganger. At that time, I could stay in Jade Mountain to look after the sect. On the other hand, if my body and the god of war doppelganger were in danger, I could replace them at any time. Lin Feng looked at the mountain peak where he was and smiled. With a thought, the god of war doppelganger appeared beside him. The god of war doppelganger could not directly bring Lin Feng's body over, but Lin Feng could summon the god of war doppelganger from the system to his side at any time. After withdrawing the god of war doppelganger, Lin Feng shook his head and looked back in the direction of the Eternal Spring Peak. He could still vaguely see the confrontation between the clouds and the golden light, but the clouds were getting thinner and thinner, and the golden light was getting more and more dazzling. Obviously, the Eternal Spring defensive formation could not hold for much longer. Half a day had passed, and the clouds of the Eternal Spring defensive formation had shrunk to a thin layer. It was completely stuck to the Eternal Spring peak, strenuously resisting the Gung Metal Tiger King's attacks. At this moment, Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He looked towards the northern sky. There, a scarlet sword ray pierced through the sea of clouds, speeding towards the Eternal Spring peak. Lin Feng smiled. It's coming. With a flicker, Lin Feng had already risen into the air, clearly intending to block the path. The person riding the scarlet sword ray was none other than Chu Bin. When he saw Lin Feng blocking his way, his face immediately turned 3 feet long. On the other side of the Eternal Spring Peak, the 100 Herb sect had already reached a critical juncture. Even from afar, Chu Bin could feel the aura of the Eternal Spring defensive formation growing weaker and weaker. It was only a step away from being broken. Now that his path was blocked, Chu Bin really wanted to kill him with a single slash. However, Lin Feng did not rely on any celestial devices or treasures. He stood in the void, which was a divine sense that could only be possessed by practitioners in the Golden Elixir period. Chu Bin observed carefully, but he could not see the depth of Lin Feng's cultivation. This made him a little afraid. He frowned and said, I have an urgent matter to attend to. Why are you blocking my way? Lin Feng smiled and said unhurriedly, Your Excellency's aura is desolate and long. Are you a disciple of the Wilderness Sword sect? Chu Bin slightly raised his eyebrows. What if I am? Lin Feng said, Nothing. Since you are a disciple of the Wilderness Sword sect, I have something to tell you. Chu Bin glanced at the Eternal Spring Peak behind Lin Feng, which was on the verge of collapse. He said impatiently, I have an urgent matter to attend to. Saving people is like putting out a fire. If you have something to say, you can say it later. Lin Feng calmly said, What I want to say is also very urgent. It is also a matter of life and death. Chu Bin was so anxious that he wanted to ignore Lin Feng. He wanted to directly pass him and rush to the Eternal Spring Peak. However, as soon as he moved, he heard Lin Feng slowly say, The Herb sect has refined a kind of elixir called Rinyuan Panacea. Its refining method is utterly heartless. Since the Wilderness Sword sect is the leader of the sect of humanity in the Transverse Mountain, it should deal with this matter. Chu Bin's heart skipped a beat. He originally wanted to leave, but his body immediately seemed to be frozen and could not move. His movements were a little stiff. He turned his neck to look at Lin Feng and tried to make his tone as steady as possible. That's just a rumor. Our Wilderness Sword sect got the news a long time ago, and specially sent people to the 100 Herbs sect to investigate and inquire. It proved that it was just a rumor. Lin Feng slightly narrowed his eyes. Oh, you are so sure. Is it you who came to inquire about this matter that day? Although Chu Bin was burning with anxiety, he had to answer patiently. Yes, you are right. I have checked the entire Eternal Spring Peak. There is no Rinyuan Panacea. Lin Feng stared at him for a long time. His mouth slightly curved and he said with a smile. But not long ago, I found a completely closed secret elixir room in the belly of the Eternal Spring Peak. I saw the so-called panacea in it with my own eyes. Rinyuan Panacea is refined with the body and soul of a child as the furnace. Chu Bin's eyes flashed with panic for a moment, but he steadied his mind. On the surface, he showed just the right amount of shock, and then appeared to be filled with righteous indignation. There's such a thing. Lin Feng nodded and said, Go to the Eternal Spring Peak and break the belly of the mountain. The truth will be revealed immediately. Chu Bin said with hatred, I thought the Herb ancestor was slandered. I didn't expect that he even dared to deceive the Wilderness Sword sect. This old man is crazy. Let's go to the Eternal Spring Peak with you. If there is any Rinyuan Panacea, I will not ignore it. Lin Feng said with emotion, You are so responsible. The Wilderness Sword sect deserves to be the first sect in the Big Transverse Mountain. That's good. Let's go. Then he turned around and flew to the Eternal Spring Peak. Chu Bin looked at the back of Lin Feng, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. He used the sword formula in his hand, and the flying sword suddenly turned into a red sword light, stabbing toward Lin Feng's back. Lin Feng did not look back and chuckled. Good acting, but not as good as me. Amidst the white lightning, the space folds that were as dazzling as crystals stacked on top of each other like a solid wall. It forcibly froze the void and prevented the manipulation of space by the two realms void technique. Even though it was only for an instant, it successfully blocked Lin Feng's two-world void technique. Lin Feng thought to himself, so that's how it is. Seeing this, Chu Bin breathed a sigh of relief. He sneered and said, "You can't meddle in the affairs of the Wilderness Sword Sect. This is the result of being nosy." Lin Feng looked at him and said, "It seems that you also know how to make Rinyuan Jindan, don't you?" Seeing that Lin Feng was about to be caught, Chu Bin was in a good mood. So what? Compared with the value of Rinyuan Jindan, that loss is negligible. Do you know how useful a batch of Rinyuan Jindan can be? Lin Feng smiled and said indifferently, "You don't need to tell me now. Later, even if you don't want to say it, I will pour out everything in your head." Chu Bin was slightly taken aback. Suddenly, he felt a faint murderous aura looming behind him. The murderous aura was so subtle that if Chu Bin hadn't reached the middle stage of the golden elixir, he wouldn't have been able to detect it. Chu Bin sensed the danger almost instantly, but it was too late for him to avoid it. The doppelganger of the god of war quietly appeared behind Chu Bin, about 300 meters away from him. But the next moment, the doppelganger of the god of war launched the void too, to directly replace the void behind Chu Bin. In an instant, it was less than 30 meters behind Chu Bin. This distance was close enough for the doppelganger of the god of war. A fist fiercely punched toward Chu Bin's back. On his arm, a layer of strange luster was deeply hidden in the skin. The skin was smooth and delicate, looking as soft as a baby's. But under this layer of skin, there was an unparalleled explosive power. The punch formed a huge whirlpool, firmly sucking Chu Bin's body. Not only was he unable to avoid it, but he was also sucked toward the heavy punch that could break a mountain. Chu Bin was greatly shocked. The pressure on his back increased rapidly. He could feel his hair standing on end. His life and death depended on a single thought. Chu Bin let out a loud roar. As a sword cultivator, his physical strength was far stronger than other cultivators in the golden elixir period. At the critical moment of life and death, all his strength burst out in an instant. The powerful explosive power allowed Chu Bin's body to make the most crucial reaction at the last moment, when the god of war's doppelganger's attack was about to hit him. Chu Bin's body tilted slightly, finally moving his spine a little bit to the side, dodging the iron fist of the god of war's doppelganger. But it was only a little bit. The fierce punch of the god of war's doppelganger still landed on his back. The violent force only exploded the moment the two sides made contact, blasting into Chu Bin's body. Chu Bin let out a cry of agony. He was in so much pain that he couldn't make a sound. The flesh on his back exploded, leaving a big hole. Distance, I must distance myself from him. This was the only thought in Chu Bin's mind. The depression in his heart almost made him roar to the sky. He was a dignified direct disciple of the Wilderness Sword Sect, a sword cultivator at the middle stage of the Golden Elixir period, and he cultivated the Wilderness Sword Sect's supreme ancient book, the Great Desolation Sword Method. The red flame fairy sword in his hand was also an extremely powerful celestial device of the Golden Elixir period. But now, he had been beaten to the point of life and death before he could even use his sword. Even at this moment, the vital part of his back was still within the attack range of his opponent. Only by distancing myself from him can I have a chance to fight back. Chu Bin drove the sword light to escape crazily, but he didn't expect that the god of war's doppelganger had already teleported in front of him with the space between two realms' wonderful technique. Chu Bin was scared out of his wits. This time, he had sent himself to the door. The god of war's doppelganger smiled and bluntly punched. No! Chu Bin screamed as his head was directly punched by the god of war's doppelganger. Without Chu Bin's control, the Desolation Element 9 refinements of Thunder Net suddenly paused in the sky and became less agile. Lin Feng's real body laughed and took the opportunity to escape from the Thunder Net. The The Desolation Element 9 refinements of Thunder Net shrank rapidly and turned into a fist-sized ball of white thunder light again. It was about to fly in the direction of the Wilderness Sword Sect in the north. Are you going to fly back to your real owner? A Yuanying stage celestial device already has such intelligence. Not bad, not bad. Lin Feng smiled and stretched out his hands. His magic arts were constantly changing. But how can I let you go? I still need your help to deal with that tiger. As Lin Feng's hands changed the magic arts, the vast purple clouds dispersed and covered the white thunder light of the Desolation Element 9 refinements of Thunder Net. In the purple clouds, light and shadow changed. Mountains, rivers, flowers, birds, pavilions, wind and clouds. Birds and beasts appeared one after another, as if an independent small world was being built. The white thunder light was trapped in this small world and seemed to be restless. In the thunder light, a vague figure flashed. It was a gloomy old man with white hair and a high crown and ancient clothes. The old man was surrounded by violent fluctuations of Dharma power. He was as terrifying as the aged Metal Tiger King and the 100 Herbs ancestor. He was Chu Bin's master, the elder of Yuanying stage in the Wilderness Sword Sect, Ancestor Huanglei. The Desolation Element 9 refinements of Thunder Net was a celestial device refined by him. In order to make it easier for the 100 Herbs ancestor and Chu Bin to use the Desolation Element 9 refinements of Thunder Net, Ancestor Huanglei had erased most of the Dharma power restriction he left in the celestial device, leaving only a strand of divine sense to prevent others from stealing the treasure. With this divine sense, Ancestor Huanglei could refine this celestial device into his doppelganger in a short time, and then kill the enemy. Ancestor Huanglei shouted in a deep voice, "How dare you kill my disciple and steal my celestial device? How dare you?" Hearing this, Lin Feng smiled and did not answer. He focused on controlling the purple mist. The war god's doppelganger had already captured Chu Bin's divine soul. He walked forward and looked at Ancestor Huanglei with a smile. "You talk too much." Then he raised his palm and chopped. The heavenly realm barrier directly cut off the connection between Ancestor Huanglei and the Desolation Element 9 refinements of Thunder Net. In a cave mansion deep in the Wilderness Sword Sect, Ancestor Huanglei was dumbfounded. It took him a long time to come to his senses, and he flew into a rage. "When I successfully reach the middle stage of Yuanying, I'll tear you into pieces." From the white lightning, one could still vaguely hear Forefather Huanglei's furious declaration. Lin Feng grinned and chuckled, returning his attention to the lightning net. The Desolation Element 9 refinements of Thunder Net had calmed down and was floating in the purple mist. Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief. "I was inspired by the heavenly cycle purple chi and created this new magic art after I reached the core formation realm, but it's still not perfect. Wait until I advance to the middle stage of Aura's core stage, after I understand the heavens and can flexibly mobilize all kinds of spiritual energy. Then this third self-created spell should be able to approach perfection." Lin Feng very quickly calculated the key points clearly. He put the Desolation Element 9 refinements of Thunder Net into his pouch and thought, "I need to refine it carefully and erase the old man's mark. Then this treasure will belong to me. But it should be enough for now." As Lin Feng was thinking, there was a loud explosion in the direction of the Eternal Spring Peak. The mist that shrouded the peak dissipated completely. The Eternal Spring defensive array was finally broken by the Gung Metal Tiger King. "I should go there now. I can't be too late." Lin Feng thought. "That glutton has been completely tamed. I can use it as my mount." Chapter 166. At this moment, on Eternal Spring Peak, demons were dancing and ghosts were howling. The Eternal Spring repellent formation had been broken by the Gung Metal Tiger King. The yellow clouds at the foot of the mountain and the green clouds at the waist of the mountain had all disappeared. Only the top of the mountain remained, struggling to hold on. But like a candle in the wind, it was on the verge of collapse. A large number of Gung Metal Tiger demons were wreaking havoc on Eternal Spring Peak. Neigh neigh. With a thunderous neigh, 4 huge thunder dragon horses pulled a city-sized cyan thunder war chariot and rushed out. The violent force directly knocked away two gung-metal tiger demons that tried to block the way. The disciples of the 100 Herbs sect who were struggling to fend off the tiger demons cheered when they saw this. Mr. Scarlet Leaf wore a black robe and had snow-white hair. Standing on the azure thunder chariot, he looked majestic. With the 7 fiend dragon-slaying sword and the magnetic yin-yang mirror, 2 golden elixir period artifacts, one for offense and one for defense. The other golden elixir period artifact, the dragon trapping rope, was floating in the air. When it saw an opportunity, it would tie up a tiger demon. The 7 fiend dragon-slaying sword would immediately follow up with another strike, ending the tiger demon. A disciple of the 100 Herbs sect sighed when he saw this. I used to think that Mr. Scarlet Leaf didn't have a sect to back him up, and that his fame was only due to the flattery of others. Now that I've seen him, I know that his fame is not just for show. Yes, he's really powerful. A demon general level tiger demon couldn't even last one round against him. The others agreed. Even if it's a demon martial level tiger demon, Mr. Scarlet Leaf can still put up a fight. I wonder how powerful Mr. Scarlet Leaf will be if he can form a golden elixir in the future. Just thinking about it makes me feel terrified. Someone said sourly, "What are you so proud of? You're just flaunting your power with a few good artifacts. I can do it too." The person was immediately mocked by the crowd. A lot of treasures means that Mr. Scarlet Leaf is very lucky. With your petty character, the treasures won't pick you. Faced with the threat of a horde of tiger demons, young Master Scarlet Leaf no longer held back. The Cyan Thunder Chariot unleashed its full power, and the rumbling thunder smashed towards the Gungjin tiger demons. Countless electric snakes shot towards the tiger demons like arrows, causing great damage to the dense group of tiger demons. The 4 Brontosaurus horses, which were the size of small elephants, also displayed their prowess. Their hooves danced in the air, and the smaller and weaker gung-metal tiger demons were directly trampled to death by the Brontosaurus horses. The strength of these 4 Brontosaurus horses was comparable to that of demon generals. They were gifted and had inherited a trace of the bloodline of the ancient Brontosaurus. Although their bloodline was extremely impure, they still had the ability to control lightning. Together with the Azure Thunder Chariot, they dashed around the battlefield like a huge ball of lightning, constantly crushing the tiger demons. Lightning was indeed the bane of the Gungjin tiger tribe. Against these tiger demons, the combination of the Brontosaurus horses and the Azure Thunder Chariot was even more effective than young Master Scarlet Leaf, controlling the 3 great enchanted artifacts. Young Master Scarlet Leaf activated the 7 Evils dragon-slaying sword and killed another tiger demon. He looked back at the peak and thought hatefully, "Gungjin Tiger King, you ruined my plans today. I will definitely have my revenge in the future. When the time comes, don't even think of begging to be my guardian tiger. I will definitely kill you." The flashy young Master Scarlet Leaf finally attracted the attention of a tiger demon commander. The fiend tiger demon commander who had fought him before sneered, "What an arrogant brat. Let's go, let's kill him quickly. This person has many treasures on him. Once we kill him, we will gain a great harvest." When the other tiger demon commanders saw the treasures on young Master Scarlet Leaf, they immediately became envious and charged towards the Cyan Thunder Chariot. They did not care about the rules of one-on-one combat. They only wanted to kill young Master Scarlet Leaf and obtain the treasures and enchanted artifacts first. As a result, 4 or 5 tiger demon commanders charged at young Master Scarlet Leaf together. Young Master Scarlet Leaf was in big trouble now. Even when the fiend tiger demon commander challenged him alone, he had to be on high alert, let alone 4 or 5 tiger demon commanders attacking him together. The dragon trapping rope was useless, the magnetic yin-yang mirror was immediately defeated, and even the 7 Evils dragon-slaying sword was fended off by 2 tiger demon commanders. A Brontosaurus horse was almost beheaded by the fiend tiger demon commander. Young Master Scarlet Leaf's face darkened. Dragons in shallow waters are toyed with by shrimps. In the future, if I don't destroy your Gungjin tiger tribe, I swear I'm not human. The fiend tiger demon commander grinned. Today you don't need to be human anymore. Become my ghost. A violent golden light flashed and condensed into a giant metal claw. It was around an acre wide and swiped at young Master Scarlet Leaf. With just you, young Master Scarlet Leaf's arcane artifacts were being held back by the other demon commanders, but he did not panic. Just as the Fiend Tiger Demon Commander's huge metallic claws were about to reach him, the space around him suddenly distorted. The great force of the twisting space directly knocked the Fiend Tiger Demon Commander's metal claw away. What is this? The Fiend Tiger Demon Commander was shocked. A few more Tiger Demon Commanders tried to surround young Master Scarlet Leaf, but they were all knocked away by this strange force. However, young Master Scarlet Leaf did not have it easy either. He was surrounded and beaten up by a group of Tiger Demon Commanders. Although he was not injured, he felt indescribably depressed. He was so depressed that he almost went mad. Roar! At this moment, a mighty dragon's roar suddenly rang out in the sky. A mighty aura that seemed to rule over all life immediately spread out, suppressing all the Tiger Demon Commanders below the Tiger Demon Commanders, until their legs turned to jelly. Even the expressions of the Fiend Tiger Demon Commander and the other Tiger Demon Commanders, who had condensed their Yao cores, changed drastically when they heard the dragon's roar. The 4 Brontosaurus horses that young Master Scarlet Leaf used to pull the carriage were in an even worse state. Their hooves gave way, and they all knelt on the ground, like subjects welcoming their ruler. They possessed a sliver of the dragon clan's bloodline. As a result, it was easier for them to submit to a true dragon. Everyone present even forgot about the battle. They raised their heads and stared into the distant sky. Their thick clouds constantly churned. Within the clouds, a heavenly dragon could be vaguely seen rising and falling. It would reveal its scales and claws from time to time, but its head and tail were nowhere to be seen. It was extremely mysterious. However, the powerful aura and the dignity of the dragon clan from the clouds made everyone certain that it was an extremely pure-blooded dragon. Finally, the clouds split open. A colossal creature over 300 meters long descended from the sky, flying towards Eternal Spring Peak. Its head resembled an ox. Its horns resembled a deer. Its eyes resembled a prawn. Its ears resembled an elephant. Its neck resembled a snake. Its abdomen resembled a snake. Its scales resembled a fish. Its claws resembled a phoenix, and its palms resembled a tiger. There were 81 scales on its back, representing the number of 9 by 9. Its breath formed clouds, and its voice sounded like a copper plate. There were whiskers by its mouth and pearls under its chin. It was a genuine true dragon. The black scales on its body shone with a dark light, and its body was brimming with chi and blood. It was the refined black dragon with the strongest physical strength among the primordial heavenly dragons. Look, there's a person standing on the dragon's back. Someone suddenly cried out in shock. The crowd was in an uproar. Everyone knew that the dragon clan was one of the strongest species. The primordial heavenly dragons had once ruled over the vast thousand worlds millions of years ago. The pride of the dragon clan was known throughout the world. Yet it was clearly willing to allow someone to stand on its back. Even Master Scarlet Leaf and the girls around him were shocked. They focused their eyesight and looked at the back of the armored black dragon. They saw a young man standing leisurely on the dragon's back with his hands behind his back. His purple robes fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal descending to the mortal realm. 3 Tiger Marshal Fae revealed looks of displeasure when they saw this scene. Although it's a pure-blooded refined black dragon, it's only at the Fae Commander level. What's there to be arrogant about? It was said that dragons and tigers fought. When the 3 Tiger Demon Commanders saw how awe-inspiring the black dragon was, and how it clearly did not come with good intentions after descending on the Eternal Spring Peak, the 3 Tiger Clan Demon Commanders roared and lunged at the black dragon in the air. The purple-robed young man on the refined black dragon's back was naturally Lin Feng. At this moment, he was looking at the colorful clouds on the mountaintop. There were metallic reflections flashing in the clouds from time to time. Looks like I'm not late. The timing is just right. As Lin Feng was thinking, he heard 3 tiger roars. Then, he saw 3 metal gung tiger demons at the Fae Commander level rise into the sky and charge at him and the refined black dragon. The refined black dragon was already extremely irritated from being stepped on by Lin Feng. However, it did not dare to lose its temper in front of Lin Feng. Now that it was provoked by the tiger demons, its anger immediately erupted. The black dragon swung its huge claws down and collided with a gung metal tiger demon that was rushing over. The gung metal tiger demon was covered in barbs, flashing with a cold light as it shot towards the black dragon. However, it could do nothing to the black dragon's iron-like scales. In terms of defense, the black scales of the refining armor black dragon were even sturdier than the steel skin of the gung metal tiger demon. The tiger demon could not break through the refined black dragon's defense. Instead, it was pressed against the mountain peak by the refined black dragon's claws, unable to move. The other two tiger marshals were enraged and were about to come to their rescue. Lin Feng was expressionless as he casually pointed. The charging momentum of the two tiger demons suddenly came to a halt. They blankly looked down, but to their horror, they found that their lower bodies had disappeared without a trace. The tiger demon's metal skin was hard to deal a fatal blow to even Sir Scarlet Leaf's strongest golden elixir period magic weapon, the dragon-slaying sword of 7 evils. But now, the two gung tiger demons were cut in half at the waist. It was like a knife cutting through tofu. They could not resist at all. Everyone stared at the scene in front of them dumbfounded. Looking at the 3 dying tiger marshals, they were so shocked that they could not speak. After a long time, the crowd suddenly exploded. Who is this? He is so powerful. He easily killed the tiger marshals, and even rode on a dragon. Could he be an ancestor of the Yuanying period? I don't know, but he is really powerful. Most importantly, he killed the tiger marshals too easily, like killing ants. Suddenly, someone in the crowd murmured, "Sir Scarlet Leaf is completely incomparable." After a moment of silence, the crowd burst into an uproar again. However, everyone lowered their voices. How? Others kill tiger marshals while Sir Scarlet Leaf only killed demon generals. Surrounded by a few tiger marshals, he could only take a beating without being able to fight back. You can tell just by looking at his mount. Didn't you see his brontosaurus horses all kneel when they saw the dragon? Although the voice was soft, how could Sir Scarlet Leaf not hear it clearly? He was so angry that he couldn't speak. His face turned from ashen to crimson red, especially when he saw his disappointing 4 thunder dragon horses. They had always been arrogant with him, and they had won him a lot of face. But now they were respectful. They bent their hooves and knelt on the ground. Their 4 horse faces looked at the armored black dragon with flattering expressions, as if they wanted to offer their chrysanthemums. Seeing this, Sir Scarlet Leaf was even more furious. On the chariot, the woman in palace attire, who was addressed as Big Sister by the other members of Sir Scarlet Leaf's harem, stared at Lin Feng for a while and suddenly said, "Lang Jun, look. That person looks familiar." Hearing this, Sir Scarlet Leaf took a closer look. He had already recognized Lin Feng. Thinking back to how he had proposed to accept Lin Feng as his chariot, he immediately felt dizzy. He calmed himself down and noticed that the women in the chariot all had strange expressions on their faces. Instantly, he felt all the blood in his body rush to his head. How dare you humiliate me like this?" Sir Scarlet Leaf roared. His body flashed with a green light, and a small cauldron suddenly flew out from the green light. Chapter 167. In reality, after Lin Feng arrived at Eternal Spring Peak, he didn't even look at Mr. Redleaf. Most of his attention was focused on the battle between the 100 Herbs ancestor and the Gung Metal Tiger King in the colorful clouds at the peak. However, Lin Feng's actions had undoubtedly provoked Mr. Redleaf even more. The behavior of looking down on others was undoubtedly indifference, or simply ignoring their existence. The arrogant girl called Buchi looked at Lin Feng, and then at Mr. Redleaf. She said, "Lang Jun, it really is the person you wanted to take as your master back then." Sigh. As soon as she said this, all the cultivators of the 100 Herbs sect and the Gung Metal Tiger tribe focused their attention on Mr. Redleaf. There was a dead silence in the air. Everyone stared at Mr. Redleaf with a strange expression. He wanted to take Lin Feng as his master? After a while, everyone, be it humans or demons, burst into laughter. No one spoke. Everyone just laughed nonstop until they were out of breath. But just because they didn't speak didn't mean others didn't understand. Every part of Mr. Scarlet Leaf's skin that was not covered by his clothes was blood red. He looked like a cooked prawn. How dare you humiliate me like this? I'm so angry. Mr. Red Leaf erupted like a volcano. As he roared, a green light flashed on his body, and a small bronze cauldron flew out from the green light. After the small bronze cauldron appeared, it attracted Lin Feng's attention. Oh, I didn't expect this guy to have such a wonderful treasure. It's a treasure that can move through space like the Black Cloud Flag. Wait, no, it's even stronger than the Black Cloud Flag. This is not a magic item from the Golden Elixir period. It's of a higher level. But it was damaged and can't use its full power. It would be good if it could use 1/10 of its power. Lin Feng was now completely interested. He turned his head and saw the small bronze cauldron suddenly vibrate under Mr. Red Leaf's control. The small cauldron suddenly disappeared from its spot. It traveled through space and appeared in front of the Fiend Tiger Demon Commander the moment it disappeared. The Fiend Tiger Demon Commander was shocked, but it was already too late for him to dodge. He could only circulate his demon chi and instantly gather a large amount of metal essence chi to form a large metal shield in front of him. Although the tiny bronze cauldron did not seem very impressive, the Fiend Tiger Demon Commander's cultivation and the innate vigilance towards danger made the Fiend Tiger Demon Commander feel a great threat from the tiny bronze cauldron. Using his full strength, he completely gave up on attacking and used all his demon chi to defend. With his strength, even the 7 Fiend Dragon slaying sword would not be able to break his defense. However, when the small bronze cauldron collided with the large metal shield, circles of ripples appeared in the space, like water ripples. As for the small cauldron, it was like a stone that had been thrown into the water. While creating ripples, it penetrated the metal shield easily. Under the horrified gaze of the Fiend Tiger Demon Commander, his body was directly penetrated by the small bronze cauldron. He had no way to resist. Before the tiny cauldron, Zhang Xian's defenses were as fragile as paper. Everyone's laughter gradually disappeared as they watched in shock as young Master Red Leaf killed the Fiend Tiger Demon General in one move. Young Master Red Leaf's face was slightly pale. Controlling the small bronze cauldron was still very taxing for him, especially the speed at which his magic power was being consumed. However, young Master Red Leaf was extremely pleased. You dare to laugh at me? I'll show you what I'm really capable of. A mere demon commander is nothing but a chicken and a stray dog. Normally, I use the void cauldron to protect myself and don't let it out easily. However, you frogs at the bottom of a well have underestimated me. I'll let you know that my void cauldron is used for defense. It resides in the unmoving void and is indestructible. When it's used for offense, it can shatter space and is indestructible. Young Master Red Leaf's face flushed with a sickly red. His gaze swept across the shocked expressions of the crowd, and his heart felt as carefree as drinking ice water in June. After looking around, young Master Red Leaf's gaze finally landed on Lin Feng, and he smiled proudly. Lin Feng was indeed looking at him now. However, his expression did not seem to be one of shock or fear. Instead, there was a hint of pity. Who do you think you are? How dare you look at me like that? Before he could finish his thought, young Master Red Leaf suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. He lowered his head and stared blankly at the bloody tip of the sword protruding from his chest. Behind him, the arrogant and cold woman in the palace dress, who was called Big Sister, held a long sword in her hand and sighed softly. Finally, the day you released the void cauldron from your body. Young Master Red Leaf blinked, as if he finally understood something. He roared and was about to counterattack. However, before he could do so, several sharp swords had already pierced into his body. Various types of magic power were wildly destroying his meridians, blood vessels, flesh, and internal organs. Boom! The cauldron on young Master Red Leaf's spear shattered. Then, his beard collapsed and his sea of chi was torn apart. His life force was completely wiped out. Why on earth? Slowly, young Master Red Leaf's body collapsed to the ground. The haughty and cold woman smiled. Have you ever wondered why we're following you? Young Master Red Leaf shook his head with difficulty. Wasn't it because of his charm? The woman smiled and said, I'm very interested in that void cauldron of yours. I want it for myself. Young Master Red Leaf panted and looked at the other women. Then what about you? An elegant purple-clothed woman said. Everyone says that you've reached enlightenment in the mountains alone and embarked on the path of cultivation. Tell me, is it true? That day, when you were wandering in the mountains, you met a cultivator who was possessed by the devil and was on the verge of death. Actually, his condition wasn't that serious. As long as you did as he said and soaked his body in the ice pond, he would be fine. How did you do it? You picked up his Tao technique book, then turned around and left, leaving him alone there to suffer all sorts of torture, and in the end he died. The purple-clothed woman said emotionlessly, That man was my father. I was late that day. By the time I wanted to save him, it was already too late. All I could do was watch my father pass away in pain. She bent down and looked at young Master Red Leaf's pale face. She said softly, My dear husband, do you think I should kill you? An indifferent white-clothed woman said to young Master Red Leaf, Don't look at me like that. I'm cultivating the primordial maiden art of Mistress Sue, and need a cauldron. I happen to meet you. You're quite suitable, so I've been using you all this time. Young Master Red Leaf's eyes widened. Cough, cough, cough. Up in the sky, Lin Feng almost choked on his own saliva. He looked at young Master Red Leaf, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Well, you're really unlucky. After all this time, it wasn't you who had sex with him. It was him who had sex with you. Young Master Red Leaf didn't despair. He looked at the other three women and said, You guys. Xiang Lanying shook her head regretfully and said, I have no grudge against you, young master. But I don't really love you. I'm here for the Rinyuan Jindan. The shy and timid girl lowered her head and didn't say a word. The girl named Xiao Meng, who looked cute and arrogant, sneered and said, Xiao Ro has a tender face. I'll say it for her. Xiao Ro has a childhood sweetheart at home. But because she met you and you took a liking to him, he came to propose marriage. Her father tried to curry favor with you, but she was afraid that your power would hurt her lover. That's why she had to give herself to you. You'd better not think too highly of yourself. Xiao Meng said with a sarcastic smile. As for me, I was hunted down that day. I was just using you to avoid trouble. I wanted to thank you, but you tried to take me by force. Xiao Meng's anger rose from the bottom of her heart. She walked up and stomped heavily on young Master Red Leaf's penis. Stomping once wasn't enough to vent her anger, so she stomped on it twice. In the sky, Lin Feng and the Black Dragon, who were both males, looked at young Master Red Leaf, who had curled into a ball like a shrimp. Both of them felt a chill in their crotch. Lin Feng subconsciously covered his crotch with his hands and shook his head. It really hurts. From the first time he met young Master Red Leaf, Lin Feng found it strange. Young Master Red Leaf was full of treasures, and his luck was heaven-defying. Yet in his talent potential value, he only had 5 points. At that time, Lin Feng almost thought that the talent detector had malfunctioned. When he met young Master Red Leaf again outside Eternal Spring Mountain, because of the Fiend Tiger Demon General, Lin Feng used the talent detector again. Well, this time, there were only 4 points left. Then, what had happened during this time? It was simple. Someone had taken in another harem. Taking in a harem was not the main point. Luck was a mysterious thing, but it was related to everyone's personality and style of doing things. There was an old saying, personality determines fate. Having too many wives wouldn't ruin one's feng shui, but the problem was, if you took in a bunch of ill-intentioned wives, it would be a big problem. Because he killed Taoist Tai Mu, Lin Feng already knew that Xiang Lanying was only following young Master Red Leaf. As for the other women, according to Lin Feng's observation, whether it was when they met Taoist Tai Mu or the Fiend Tiger Demon General, their actions were like adding oil to the fire. They were doing everything they could to help young Master Red Leaf attract hatred. They were really afraid that their husband would die too slowly. Then the problem was simple. including Xiang Lanying, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There were exactly 6 of them. They forcibly defeated young Master Red Leaf, who originally had a heaven-defying luck value, and turned him into a failure. Lin Feng shook his head and laughed. That's why I said, young man, you're too naive. Love is selfish, and no one is willing to share it with others. You said that you have a harem, and you fight every day. That's barely normal. You have a harem, and it's so harmonious. Who would believe that? Harems don't fight among themselves, but instead band together. Who do you think they're going to fight? It's definitely you. It's not that you can't have a harem, but if you want to have sex with every woman you see, and if you want to take in beautiful women, you should at least do some research first. Isn't it too much to accept a bunch of your enemies into your harem? Did he really think that his charm could brainwash people? Lin Feng looked at the dying young Master Red Leaf with pity and said, starting a harem is a very delicate and technical thing. Young man, you're still too young. Refining armor Black Dragon. What? Hearing that dragons were lustful, Lin Feng reminded, Brother Dragon, the harem is dangerous. You need to be careful. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.